Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic, most people believed the Yondaime to be Naruto's father, but they were wrong. His actual father had to watch as Kyuubi was sealed into his newborn son and sent into a world of hatred. And now, he wants vengeance. Check the description and give a sub to my thumbnail maker God Kage Theories. Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and if you want to make suggestions or something else, tell me in the comment section. Now let's roll the intro. Chapter 36, revealing who Raida really is. Naruto twirled the metal ball overhead and threw it. The heavy ball smashed into his target, but it barely left a dent in him. He then charged and stabbed him right in the stomach with his kama, but it had no effect either. He avoided a clawed hand at him and backed up. Still trying a way to figure out to get past Yujo's impenetrable hide, Naruto was able to keep 2 steps ahead of him due to his speed, as Yuho had gotten slower due to his increased weight and body mass due to his transformation, so he was able to keep away from his attacks while he tried to figure out a plan. None of his moves were working against him, as his skin was too tough due to the poison he covered himself with. But he was determined to pierce his thick hide and win this battle. He then made hand symbols and suddenly multiple shuriken appeared in his arms and he tossed them all at once with deadly accuracy at him. The ninja stars stuck into Yuho and Naruto smirked, thinking he did some damage. But Yujo's body glowed and he let out a yell and sent them right back at him. Oh shit! Naruto shouted, covering himself from the attacks. He felt the piercing edge of the weapons cutting his clothes and making nicks and cuts on his skin. After they were gone, Naruto uncovered himself, as fortunately they did minimal damage to him. Great, if I attack him head on his skin will deflect it, and if I try throwing stuff at him he'll just send it back at me. This sucks, he muttered to himself. The crowd in the arena watching cheered on their favorites for the interesting battle. In the stands, Sakura Haruno watched on as Raida avoided an attack aimed for his head. She inhaled each time when she saw him evade the blows of his slower but stronger opponent whose skin was seemingly impenetrable. The boy that she highly suspected to be someone else was moving, weaving to keep himself away from his claws. She wasn't the only one. In the stands was Anko Mitarashi watching on by himself, standing up. The boy she knew that was really Naruto had grown stronger since he had disappeared over 2 months ago. She could tell that his strength and abilities had grown, and a part of her was proud that he had grown. But she knew she would be prouder and happier if he was a leaf nin instead of wearing a sound Hitai 8. As she watched the fight, a part of her, perhaps due to the fact that she had raised and looked after him for 12 years, was a bit concerned. That ninja had poisoned the last time and appeared to be trying to do so again in this fight. Should he try anything, she would be down there to protect him. Interesting fight, Anko? Asked a voice, and she turned her head and saw to her surprise a white-haired man wearing red next to her. It was Jiraiya the Toad Sannin. Who knows how long he had been there, as she was so focused on the right. Leaning against the rail he looked on. I never really thought I would see someone use the Toad style of fighting. The guy who made that style passed away years ago, long before my time, and his teachings was said to have been lost. Even I couldn't do the things that man is using right now. Anko looked at the hermit, stunned that he was here, and the fact that his hands weren't moving either. Noticing this, the pervert smiled. You two believe that there is something more to that black-haired kid, don't you? The Kage looked on, tapping his fingers together anxiously. Come on boy, you can do this. Just like the other two you bested, a toad may appear impossible to defeat due to its hide, but it has a weak spot that you must find if you hope to win this fight. Naruto avoided a swipe at his head and rushed him, tackling him. This proved to be ineffective, however, as Yuho was not moved whatsoever. Annoyed, he picked Naruto up with little trouble and tossed him onto the ground. Naruto rolled on the dirt and pulled himself up. Give it up. You can't defeat me, your pitiful weapons cannot pierce my hide. Taunted Yuho Shohei to him, and it appeared that he was right. Nothing Naruto had done did any damage to him. Naruto scoffed as if he would ever give up to him. He would find a way past his skin and defeat him. Sheathing his kusanagi, he pulled out his kusarigama and twirled the metal ball overhead, keeping him at a distance. There was a weakness, as no fighting style or animal was unbeatable. He just had to find it. He sent the metal ball at him, and as expected his skin deflected the weapon. Naruto did so again, not giving up, but Yuho this time timed it and caught the chin. A tug of war happened between the two, Yuho pulling with both hands as Naruto struggled to break free of the man's iron grip. He was slowly being dragged forward as he could not get loose. "You're mine," shouted Yuho, giving a mighty tug, and Naruto stumbled forward, leaving himself exposed to his claws, but at the last split second Naruto recovered and ducked the claw and stabbed the kama into his stomach. It did no damage as he expected it to, but he wasn't done yet. Pulling the blade upwards, he went up the shoulder and right into the side of Yujo's neck. Suddenly he heard Yuho let out a shout of pain and let go of the weapon, clutching his neck. Naruto looked on, a bit confused when it hit him. The neck was his weak spot. Seizing the opportunity, he tossed a kunai at the small target from behind, which hit him in the back of the neck, causing him to lurch forward in pain, reaching up towards the knife and yanking it out. Realizing that he had to take the advantage while he had it, Naruto charged him, sword drawn. Yuho, dazed and disoriented due to his weak spot being hit, was unable to defend himself, and his skin was no longer as hard as it once was, leaving him completely vulnerable to Naruto's overwhelming attacks. Naruto hit him in the stomach with a kick and then punched him in the face with the hilt of his blade. He sliced at his arm, which Yuho blocked, but the advantage was clearly his, as Yuho could not keep up as he was too slow in this form. Charging him, he leapt to a tree, bouncing off it whilst doing a flip and delivering a spiral kick into his chest, knocking him on his back. Yuho struggled to his feet, and Naruto, charging chakra into his fist, run towards and delivered a powerful uppercut, knocking him up into the air and landing hard on his back. Yuho struggled to pull himself up off the ground and went back to his human form. "You are good, but it's time for me to end this." Getting up, he then made hand symbols, activating his fourth transformation jutsu. Itsu Gekidoku Dokueki, Hubi Shiki. 5 deadly venoms. Snake style, his body transformed again. Like before, it was reptilian in nature, but his skin was a brown light color and his eyes become gold-like and slanted. Fangs sprouted from his mouth and markings appeared on his legs and arms as his fingernails sprouted and got longer, and his tongue slithered out of his mouth, which was shaped just like a cobra's. Up where the cages sat, the Kage mused over this transformation. Snake style, a truly deadly art. It was said that a true master of it could strike at blinding speed and defeat his enemies with just one blow if he could strike in the right part. Just like a snake poisons its victims before he devours them. He muttered. Sarutobi looked at him. "You know of that art of fighting?" "Yes, but I do not believe it will be enough to defeat the Sound Nin. He has shown that he has more than few tricks up his sleeve," he said. Of course he knew about that style. It was one of his preferred styles when it came to hand fighting. Sarutobi nodded as the two watched one. Naruto held out his sword as the two circled one another as Yuho hissed at him and his tongue slithered out. Slowly the two circled around one another, waiting for the other to make the first move. Yuho made the move as he charged Naruto with great speed, zigzagging at him just like a snake does. He attacked ferociously, striking with both hands, and Naruto was back on the defensive as the man was relentless in his attack. Naruto suddenly felt himself back into a tree and saw Yujo's jab coming in. Moving fast, he narrowly dodged and he hit the tree instead. He then saw the tree and was shocked when it began decaying and looking sick-like. The tree had been poisoned by the attack. If he could do that to wood, imagine what it would do to human flesh. Yuho again attacked him, this time delivering lethal fast kicks. A kick landed on his wrist holding his sword, and then Yuho kicked the kusanagi out of his grip and into the air, and he could only watch as it flew and stuck into the ground far away from him. He had no time to worry about that as he had to keep moving. He could not be hit by one of his blows as it would mean the end of him. Yuho threw a stinging jab at him and Naruto brought his left arm up to block it. He felt fire shoot throughout his arm in pain, but it was quickly healed by Kyuubi. He then cartwheeled out of the way of his next attack and dodged his kicks. The punches and jabs were poisonous, but apparently the kicks weren't. "Damn, this fight is going back and through with each second," said Anko, watching on. One moment it appeared Naruto would win, but the next Yuho had the advantage. It was too close to call. "It certainly is," said Jiraiya, his hand starting to move. "Touch me with that and I'll cut it off with a rusty axe." Anko threatened, not bothering to look. Jiraiya decided to not take his chances and resumed watching. "Come on, kick his ass dammit," shouted to Yuya watching with Haku. The two were watching and looking on as Naruto evaded the attacks. "It doesn't look good for him, he lost Kusanagi and he can't be hit while he's in that form or else he'll be poisoned," replied Haku. "Shut the hell up," snapped to Yuya at him not wanting to hear it. "Come on you stupid idiot, don't you dare lose." She did not want to see him lose, especially after what they've been through. Muda looked on as the fight had gotten interesting lately, it was enough to get him excited. Naruto in the trees hiding from him realized that he had one chance to stop him, reached into his pocket pulling out a kunai and made a cut. "I have you now." His eyes widening he cursed and turned around to be met with a solid kick to the chest knocking him off the tree and onto the ground. Yuho leapt out doing a double flip and landed on the ground, his tongue slithering out. "Any last words?" he taunted him hissing, but to his surprise he saw Naruto grin and chuckle. "Hey, what's so funny?" Naruto then revealed his bloody hand and a summoning scroll in the other. "This, Kuchio's no jutsu," he shouted using the summoning jutsu. A large boa constrictor appeared and before Yuho could defend himself it had wrapped its large body around him, trapping him and preventing his arms from moving, and like its name suggested began to squeeze its powerful body. Yuho thrashed doing to break free, but the more he struggled the more pressure was put on his body. Feeling his ribs start to crack he fell to the ground struggling still. He continued doing so for a minute until he stopped struggling and went still, no longer moving. "Yeah, that's how it's done," shouted to Yuya smiling as it looked like he was going to win. In the stands Sakura let out a sigh of relief as it looked like he won. "Finally it looks like this fight is over." And he won. The crowd was slowly starting to cheer, thinking that Raita had won the battle. But Anko had a frown on her face as she had a feeling this wasn't close to being done. "Snake Summoner, eh? Reminds me of the old days," mused Jiraiya, remembering how an old friend once pulled that trick in this very arena to defeat him during the Chunin exams. Kage Sozano looked on, an amused look on his face at the fools cheering. Impudent imbeciles cheering as if it was over. This battle isn't even close to over. A snake still has plenty of tricks up his sleeve. Naruto slowly approached the not moving Yuho, his kusarigama in hand just in case. The man showed no signs of moving and it was possible that he had been crushed to death by the boa constrictor. Naruto looked at Genma, who walked forward looking at the body and nodded and prepared to announce the decision. Due to Yujo's death, the winner is Yarg. Suddenly, before anyone in the arena could react, the not-so-lifeless Yuho sat up and delivered a brutal blow to the unsuspecting Naruto's chest. A cry of anguish and agony erupted from Naruto as searing pain shoot throughout his entire body. Yuho kicked up and laughed at him. "Fool. For a snake summoner, don't you know that a snake will play dead to lure its prey in? You have paid the price for your ignorance." He then attacked and kicked Naruto in the side, knocking him into the tree. This battle is not done yet. Naruto pulled himself up and weakly pulled out a kunai as he clutched his chest. His chest burned with pain at the sneak attack he had done and he was unable to use the kusarigama effectively, forcing him to use a kunai instead. Yuho then went back to his human form again. "I'll defeat you with the same form I used to defeat you the first time." He then made hand symbols preparing his final transformation. Itsu Gekidoku Dokueki, Sasori Shiki. For his final form he changed differently. The first 4 forms he looked humanoid, but not with this one as his entire body changed. A tail with a stinger sprouted out his back, his arms changed and became more pincer-like, powerful enough to snap bones. His body becomes more monstrous as his transformation from human to a scorpion went into effect. Naruto could only look on as he remembered what happened last time and the unbearable pain he went through as he had been stabbed by his stinger. Instinctively he reached towards his shoulder where he had been poisoned, bringing back memories. Determined to not go down without a fight, he made hand symbols. Sanejishu. A snake shot out of his wrist bearing its fangs, but Yuho caught it easily with no trouble and snapped it in half. "It will take more than simple tricks to beat me," he shouted, stabbing with his tail. Naruto rolled around the ground evading it and got up clutching his chest. He realized that he had no choice but to run, and pulling himself up he started to run away. "Coward!" shouted Yuho, prepared to chase after him. Genma appeared in front of him blocking his progress. "This battle is hereby. Out of my way!" shouted Yuho, shoving the proctor aside. "This battle ends when he is no longer moving." He snarled and charged after him. Naruto in pain ran as fast as his weary feet could carry him. He had to think of a plan as he could sense Yuho was after him. The poison was going throughout his body and he was unable to use anything except for a kunai. He heard a roar and turned and saw Yuho running towards him. The scorpion-like ninja attempted to kick him and snapped a tree in half, hitting it instead. Naruto then remembered that he had one secret weapon left he had forgotten about that could possibly save him. Reaching into his pocket he pulled out a small object, an egg made of glass. "I have you now," shouted Yuho, and he went to take his head off with his pincer. Naruto barely managed to duck and suddenly crushed the glass egg and threw it right into the unsuspecting Yujo's face. "Airfish, my eyes," he shouted, screaming in pain as the egg contained dirt and also glass, sending sharp pieces into his face. He wiped his face with his pincers, trying to clear his vision, as although they were small, the pieces of glass hurt like hell. Naruto reached for a kunai when he saw in the corner Kusanagi. It was nearby, sticking into the ground still. If he could get it, he could end this. He started to run towards the weapon when he stopped short, clutching his chest in pain as the poison was still acting up even though Kyuubi was trying to heal it. He fell to his knees just mere inches away from it, and Yuho had now cleared his vision and seeing him stalked his way towards him. Enko, seeing this, was about to go down there when a firm hand landed on her shoulder. She scowled and looked at Jiraiya, who was shaking his head. "Wait, let us see what will happen before you do anything," he said, forcing her to remain. Mixed looks were in the crowd as well, the sound trio watching their comrade in danger, a grin on Muta's face as he watched on, Gaara watching on, and rarely seen excitement in his eyes. Fear in Sakura's eyes at what could happen. His face, although hidden by the mask he wore, concern was on the Kage's face as he gripped the chair as he watched events unfolding as he struggled to remain still. Which did not go unnoticed by the Hokage. "Now you die," shouted Yuho, prepared to take his head as Naruto was just fingertips away from having the sword. Naruto was so close, but he knew he could not get it and pull it out in time, was prepared to accept defeat when he heard a voice. "Naruto, do something." He then heard a female voice, Tuyuya's voice, at him, which only he had heard, as if he had heard her thoughts urging him to win. He then felt something come onto him as he reached the sword and grabbed it. The pincer aimed for his head was suddenly blocked and countered by a blade, much to his surprise. "What?" he shouted in shock that he was stopped by the boy who had somehow pulled out his sword and blocked the attack and was now in front of him, as if the poison was no longer affecting him. He then noticed that his eyes were red now instead of blue. How is this possible? He attempted to hit him again, but again Naruto blocked, and this time he went on the offensively, attacking fast and hard with no mercy being shown to him as he was relentless. The poison was no longer bothering him when just seconds before he could barely stand on his knees. Yuho blocked with his pincers but was forced to back up on the defensive as he could not read his movements like he was able to before. He lashed out with his tail, which Naruto ducked under, and grabbing his kusarigama, which he had tucked in, threw the metal ball at him, hitting him in the face, stunning him and forcing him to backtrack. Naruto continued the attack and made a slashing motion of attacks which Yuho blocked but was taking minor hits, and they were starting to pile up. "Enough of this," he shouted and shot out his tail stinger filled with poison. Naruto sidestepped and bringing his sword down cut it right in half. A scream of pain come from Yuho as fluid spilled out of his tail and he reverted back to his human form. Naruto then stabbed him in the abdomen with his kusarigama, a slicing wound across his chest, blood appearing as he alternated between his two weapons. He shoulder tackled Yuho and knocked him to the ground. He went to hit him with the metal ball, but Yuho, used to such tactics from the pit, rolled out of the way. Yuho then reached towards his pockets he had and strapped onto his right fist in secret a cestus, a glove with spikes an inch long on it that would do damage to an unsuspecting opponent, the only weapon he used during his time in the pit as it strengthened his blows. Getting to one knee he waited, and when Naruto got in range threw a punch right into his stomach, causing him to fall forward in pain at the unsuspecting blow. Yuho then followed it up with a punch that would have shredded Naruto's face, but he was able to avoid it but received damage from the spikes, causing small drops of blood to spill. Yuho imagined himself back in the pit with the hundreds of bloodthirsty onlookers, cheering for him as he was their champion, finally facing a foe that had pushed him to the brink of his abilities. This was the fight that would determine his fate. Both fighters were weary and tired from the ongoing battle that they had had, even though Naruto's eyes still burned a murderous red. Grudging respect for each ninja's skills was in both of their eyes. It was time to end it. One would win, one would lose. Yuho charged him and using his weight to his advantage pushed him back, keeping his sword at bay, unable to harm him. Seeing a tree that they were nearing, he planned at smashing him into it, leaving him at the mercy of his cestus. They were nearing it and Naruto, seemingly sensing what he was planning, fought back and using his momentum against him, sidestepped and pushed him forward, smacking his covered head into the tree. Yuho, disoriented, attempted to clear his head, but Naruto was prepared to end it. He first slashed at his legs, cutting his cruciate ligaments, forcing him to his knees. Knowing he had to end this now, he went behind him and stabbed his weapon right in between his shoulder blades and into his back. Yuho collapsed on his belly, severely wounded. Naruto then reached down and turned him on his back and raised his sword up, prepared to drive it into his heart, when he stopped briefly and looked down. The man was breathing hard, blood coming from his mouth, unable to defend himself from the oncoming blow that would end it. His eyes turned back to blue as he looked down at his opponent, who was at his mercy. Yuho, knowing that he didn't have much longer left to live, looked up at him and knew that this was the death that he wanted, fighting to the end. End it, he shouted, and Naruto hesitated for a brief moment, but then his face hardened, seeing him nod, knowing that he wanted this, and he stabbed the blade right into Yujo's heart, ending the taijutsu user's life. Pulling out his blade, he sheathed it and looked down at him. You were a good opponent, Yuho Shohei. Who knows, maybe if we had met under different circumstances we might have been friends. He said to him as he bowed respectfully to the fallen ninja. Alright, he did it. Shouted Zaku Abumi, exchanging high fives with his teammates. It's finally over, said Sakura Haruno. At that was a nerve-wrecking battle for her. Now only one thing remained. Anko let out a sigh as she and Jiraiya looked on as slowly applause and cheering come from the crowd. The little brat, no matter if he was a sound nin or a leaf nin, still drove her to a nervous breakdown. The Kage was applauding quietly in approval of what had happened, as under the robes and mask he had a smile on his face, his golden eyes gleaming. Good job, my son, I knew you would win. I am proud of you. I knew it, I knew it, I told you he would win against that bastard. Shouted Tayuya, shaking Haku, glad that Naruto had won. Muda, who was next to Kage, crossed his arms, a smirk on his face. And then there were three, who knows? Maybe you'll be the next one to fall to him. He said. Perhaps he was right after all, the boy was the worthy opponent he was looking for. Genma was prepared to make his announcement. The winner of the round is. Rai. Stop. He was suddenly interrupted, surprising him as the boy had stopped him. Wait, I have something to tell you, each and everyone here. He stopped and turned to the crowd, who was a bit confused over what he was doing. I am not Raida Asakura. Raida was just a name I took so I could participate in the exams because I was foolishly afraid of something. But now it is time for me to shed Asakura and let everyone know who I really am. He said to the crowd. He stopped, and after reassuring himself and taking a few deep breaths. I am a ninja who once had Konoha as my village, but no longer. I am as of now a ninja who wears the symbol of Otogakur, the hidden village of sound. I am Naruto Uzumaki. Chapter 37. Kage's Dark Intentions. In a room at a building, kneeling in front of a metal barrel, was a shadowy figure who was waiting patiently for the signal. Hanzo, the Shadow of Aim, as he was called due to his stealth and quickness, was waiting for the signal telling him to do his job that he was supposed to do. He had found a building apparently abandoned, and it was a suitable target for him. During his search he had been discovered by two Anbu, who apparently were the only ones on duty as the rest were at the arena. Easily disposing of them, he set up in the room and was now waiting for the moment where he would remove the lid and light the fluid that was inside the barrel as Kage had instructed him to so. The Jashin follower had told him he would give a signal to do so soon. The plan was, after Kage had given him the signal, he would activate the barrel and it would trigger an explosion. Orochimaru's forces were at this time preparing to invade and destroy Konoha. The explosion would cause them to think that it was time to attack, and they would charge into Konoha, which would no doubt be defended by its citizens. During that time he and the rest would attack and capture the boy who contained the Kyuubi as a vessel. During the confusion they would slip away and head back to Omegakure and their leader. Looking out the window he could hear the cheering of the crowd from the arena, as apparently someone had just won their fight. Looking back at the metal barrel in the center of the room, Hanzo couldn't wonder at how soon those cheers would be turned to cries of agony. At the arena the crowd was cheering the victor of the match, as the boy known as Raida Asakura had triumphed over Yuho Shohei in battle, ending Yujo's life. In the stands Anko Mitarashi was watching with the toad Sanin Jiraiya who had unexpectedly returned and joined her. Her eyes were narrowed as she watched on as the boy who she knew who he really was stood there. Genma had been prepared to announce him as the winner and that he had advanced to the next round when he had suddenly been interrupted by Raita, who then made an announcement. "I am not Raita Asakura. Raita was just an alias that I made up so I could enter the exams because I foolishly was afraid of something. But the time has come for me to shed Asakura and let everyone know who I really am," he said. The crowd looked on confused, not understanding what he was doing. He took a deep breath and continued. "I was once a ninja who had Konoha as my village, but no longer. I am now a ninja who wears the symbol of Odogakure, the hidden village of sound." He then brought his hands up and casted a jutsu on himself. The crowd looked on in complete shock as those who were of Leaf recognized the boy in the center of the arena. His once black hair now was blonde and his eyes were now rounder than they were before. He wore orange clothing and he lifted his head so everyone could see him. He then dispelled the jutsu, transforming back to his regular self. "I am Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto announced to the crowd, who were stunned and shocked at what they had just saw. The vessel for Kyuubi, which many believed had disappeared forever months ago, had returned. Sakura Haruno, looking on now, knew the truth at who she had believed him to be the first time she saw him at the beginning of the exams. He was finally revealed. "I find it hard to believe, but that really is Naruto," said Kakashi, having just returned to witness the revealing of his former student. At his side was Sasuke Uchiha, who was stunned that his first rival had come back. "What the hell is that idiot doing? Why did he reveal himself right now?" shouted Yuya, standing next to Haku, who had his chin propped on his fingers. "He is shedding Raita from him forever. Did you not say for him to do that?" he said to her. "Yeah, but not at a time like this, not when." Yuya went quiet as she watched on. Naruto looked around the arena as he saw the entire crowd. Looking towards where Sarutobi sat, he bowed respectfully to the old man. He could also see the man who seated next to him was tense. He could tell the crowd was murmuring and could hear their whispers. "Kill the fox monster," shouted one man in the crowd. "How could they let him back into here?" shouted another. The crowd then erupted into yelling and booing, somewhere calling for him to be disqualified immediately and banished from Konoha, as he was technically a missing nin. Trash was being tossed into the arena from them at him, but he did not move a muscle as he took it all in. Anko looked around in disgust at some of the actions the crowd was doing. She was shocked, but when she really thought about it, she wasn't exactly surprised to see them doing this. But the fact they were throwing trash at him made her sick to her stomach. Jiraiya, seeing this, placed a firm grip on her shoulder. "Easy, don't lose your temper, you're just going to make things worse," he said, trying to calm her down to little effect. "Damn it, come on, let's go," shouted Yuya to Haku as the two made their way down the steps and joined up with Naruto. "What the hell were you thinking? Why do you decide to do this?" she snapped at him as the crowd continued throwing stuff at them. Naruto looked at her, unsure how to respond. Haku narrowly avoided an item hitting his head and looked around and saw to his surprise Hinata Hyuga was trying to stop some people from throwing items at them. Her father remained seated and he could also see Neji as well, the Hyuga clan looking on, few of them participating in the throwing of trash. Using his bloodline and creating an ice wall, he defended himself and the others from the thrown items. "That's it," snapped Yuya, angrily getting her flute out as she had had it with being used as a target. But before she could summon her Duki, Naruto reached out and stopped her. "Don't," he said, stopping her. "If you attack them now, you'll just make things even worse than what they already are." "Oh, how can they get any worse?" she asked sarcastically. "These jerkasses are throwing garbage at us all because they can't handle the fact that you're different than the rest of them. I've accepted the fact they won't accept me now and maybe never, but I won't stoop to their level." He said, his words surprising her. Was he turning the other cheek and refusing to fight back even after all they had done to him? "I may not agree with her very often, Naruto, but she is right," said Haku, straining to keep the ice wall up. "If we don't do something, the only way we're getting out of this is 6 feet deep in trash," he said as he tried to protect them from the bombardments. Up in the stands there was much talk going on. "I can't believe it, that last place loser was here all along and none of us knew about it," exclaimed Kiba Inuzuka, talking to the rest of the rookies about what had just happened. "Yeah, how could he show up? I thought he disappeared forever when he realized he was useless." said Ino Yamanaka. Sakura, hearing her words, glared at her rival, not liking what she just said. The only losers I see are you bunch, said a voice, and they turned and saw the Sound Trio, all three of them looking displeased over what had happened. Hey, Naruto's your comrade now, ain't he? How come you guys let him come back? Said Choji, drawing looks of hatred from them. Naruto joined Sound because we could care less about what makes him different. I didn't realize discrimination was a big part of Konoha's values. Sneered Kintsuchi. The only useless one I see is you, pig. She spat out at Ino. Just because he's different makes him inferior to you guys, is that it? Do these holes in my arms make me inferior as well? Said Zaku, holding up his palms, showing his air cutters that had been surgically installed. You people act like you in this village is the greatest thing to happen in the world when you're nothing but a bunch of creeps. Wait a sec, you getting too personal now, Sound Nins, said Rock Lee, standing up on his crutches. Most of us have never shown hatred towards Naruto. I wanted him to join our team before he disappeared actually. Or not like what you think. Says the one who was treated as a joke since he could only use taijutsu. Muttered Dosu Kinyuta. I heard you were treated as nothing more than an afterthought till your sensei decided to take you in. Wait, said Sakura, standing up. Yeah, we have pride in our village, but we don't believe we're better than anyone who happens to be different than us. She said to them. Dosu scoffed and, standing up, reached towards his bandages and removed them. Sakura gasped at what she saw, and so did the others as they saw his scarred face and blind eye. See this, these wounds I got when I was a child when my village was destroyed. For 7 years I've had to cover myself as no one would accept me for what had been done to me, and I can see it clearly on your face as well, like everyone in this lousy place who hate people who are different than them. You probably hate Naruto as well. That's not true, shouted Sakura. I did hate Naruto, but only out of foolishness. He started to become one of my friends, one of the few he had, and if he hated me as much as I hated him, then why did he save me in the forest of death? HMPH, tell him you don't hate him yourself then. Dosu turned to Zaku and Kin, who stood up as well. Come on, I don't like to waste time with a bunch of bigots, he said to them, and the three walked away. Sakura looked back down at the arena. Was he right? Did they hate people just because they were different? Sarutobi, stop this immediately, growled the Kage angrily to him. Sarutobi looked on and saw the ruler of Sand upset over what had been happening. Sarutobi had felt that the boy was going to reveal himself soon and feared that this would happen should he do it. Sarutobi, stop them this instant or I will stop them myself, ordered the Kage, and the Hokage knew he had to act now. Enough. His voice boomed over the entire arena, stopping everyone from what they were doing. This has gone far enough, he shouted, a rare look of anger on his face. Haku had removed his ice wall as no more objects were being thrown. The next person to throw an object of any sort will be punished severely. This is to end now, he shouted. A few people in the stands had their arms raised ready to throw, but none would dare go against the Hokage. Naruto Uzumaki, he said, and the boy and his teammates turned to face him. First things first, it is good to see you again, although you may be of a different village now. It does my heart good to see that you are alive, he said, a smile on his face. Secondly, you are to return to the stands with your teammates at once and only to appear when your next match begins. If anyone attempts to harm you or your teammates before their matches, he shall be found guilty and punished swiftly and harshly at once. He is of another village now and is under Sound's protection, and harming him will cause trouble between our two villages. This mess shall be cleaned up immediately, and then the exams will continue. I want no more ruckuses caused. Do I make myself clear? He said. Murmurings come from the crowd, but none would dare go against the Hokage, not even the councilmen, which some had angry looks, including one known as Danzo. Two Anbu appeared to escort Naruto, Tayuya, and Haku back to the stands. As they made their way back, Naruto heard a familiar voice. Naruto. He turned around and saw Anko, who had made her way down to the floor. It is good to see you, Anko, he said to his sister-like figure, a smile on his face. Naruto, she said quietly, unsure what to say now. She had much she wanted to say but was unsure what to tell him. That she missed him. That his father was planning something. What could she tell him? I'm sorry, Anko, but I have to go back now. I'll talk to you later. Before she could say anything, he walked off, leaving her in the center of the arena. It appears that Naruto has changed much these past months since he disappeared," said Kakashi. "You knew he was back all along, didn't you, sensei?" asked Sasuke to him to his face. Kakashi turned his head and ignored the question. Sarutobi sat down and rubbed his head, glad that that was over with for now. But no sooner than he sat down did his guest stand up. "I have to go now, Hokage-sama, but I'll be back in a short while," he said and left him. The would-be Kage after he exited the arena meet up with his loyal henchman Kabuto Yakushi. "Kage, sir, all the preparations are complete," he said to him, a smile on his face. The Kage removed his hat and revealed himself. "Good, in 45 minutes we attack. You know what to do," said Orochimaru. "What happened in there?" asked Kabuto. Orochimaru growled. "Something that has made my desire to see this place destroyed increased," he said as he walked away. After making their way back up to the stands where the rest of the competitors were at, Naruto then saw Tayuya start to walk away. "Hey Tayuya, where are you going?" The girl stopped and turned around. I have to take care of now. You're hiding something from me," he said, frowning a bit. "What's wrong? Something's up and I want to know what." The redhead looked at him and he saw concern in her eyes. "Naruto, promise me something." Naruto looked at her, confused, not understanding. "Promise me that no matter what happens now, that you'll be safe." "I don't want anything to happen to you." Naruto smiled and unexpectedly wrapped his arms around her, hugging her, causing a blush to appear on her face. "I promise, Tayuya, I'll be safe, and promise me that you also won't get hurt either." Tayuya smiled and hugged him back, surprising herself with what she was doing. "I promise as well that I'll be safe," she said, reassuring him. She let go and walked away, a smile on her face. As she made her way, her smile turned into a determined frown as she met up with her lord and the rest of the Sound Four in a corner of the arena. "Are you ready, Tayuya?" asked Orochimaru to her. Her eyes narrowing in determination, she nodded and joined up with them. "You seem happy about something," said Mutadedoji at the arena to Kage Sosano. "Of course, the board is set, all the pieces are in position, and it is time for the game to unfold," he responded, an evil glint in the soulless eyes of the follower of Jashin. "Life and death is nothing but a game for you, is it?" asked Muta as he looked over at his rival. Finally, he would have the fight that he had been longing for against him. Thinking back to their first meeting in the woods of Odogakure, destiny had drawn them here for their final battle. Kage smirked and pulled out of his pocket a small bronze box and opened it. Inside were 7 rings, each one with a different jewel in the center. Taking each one, he'd put them on his fingers until all except for his thumbs had rings on them. The jewels glowed, each one a different color. Red, blue, orange, green, black, white, pink, and the purple ring he wore that had the symbol of Jashin on it. Kage felt power surge within him. Muta reached towards his Nodashi, unsure of what to make of what was happening. What devilish tricks was he using now? Jashin knows how to grant rewards to his most loyal subjects, said Kage as he brought his hands together as light come from the rings. He was ready to make his move as he saw his opponent for the match. Cleaning up the mess that had been caused by the crowd, the cleanup crew was then prepared to dispose of Yujo's body, which was all that remained. But before they could touch the body, a beam of purple energy appeared past them and hit his body. They could only watch as his body disintegrated into dust, leaving only his helmet. The crowd and the cleanup crew were stunned at what had just happened, as nothing except for his helmet was left. Suddenly a body was thrown into the arena and landed on the ground. It was Shino. It looked like he had been attacked. Another figure stood up on the rails and leapt down onto the ground. "Hey, what are you?" one of them started to say, but was laid out by a punch by Kage. Shino Aburame stood up but was tackled and thrown into a tree, landing on his belly in pain. Kage had ambushed the bug user before the fight started, catching him off guard. Another of the cleanup crew tried to stop him, but Kage whipped out his mace and struck him in the jaw, knocking him out. "What in the world is he doing?" said Naruto, watching on, unsure at what he was doing. Kage laughed insanely as he walked forward, stepping on Yujo's helmet, and looked up. "Lord Jashin, bear witness, for on this glorious day, Konoha shall be turned into ruins." He then thrusted his arm upwards and outshot a large purple skull-like head made of energy into the sky. It went up into the air and then exploded, sending electric sparks into the sky. Hanzo, watching from the window, saw the sparks fly up into the air. Knowing that that was the signal, he went to the metal barrel and removed the lid, the dark purple liquid, the contents of it. Getting a lighter, he carefully lit it and lowered it to the liquid. The liquid had been blessed by Jashin priests and was extremely dangerous, so Kage told him. Once lit, it started to bubble at a fast pace nearing the top, and Hanzo knew he had to get out of the building fast, and he leapt out the window. Landing on his feet on another nearby building, he turned around and looked on. A drop of the liquid overflowed the barrel and spilled to the floor. Back at the arena, confused onlookers then heard a loud explosion as the building that had been used had been obliterated, destroyed by the concoction that Kage had made. Hanzo could only watch in shock as he had never seen anything like that, as nothing was left of the building except for ruins. What was that? Asked a sound nin who was with a group that had heard the explosion. Is it time for us to attack? Questioned a sand nin who was amongst the group. I thought Lord Orochimaru had a different signal than that. The leader of the group regained control and reasoned with them. If we don't attack now, the Leaf will get a chance to prepare themselves. Charge. The group along with other squads charged as well into Konoha, beginning the invasion. What on earth is going on? Shouted Orochimaru. Where had that explosion came from? Kabuto was supposed to use a jutsu that would knock them all out. Sir, all units are charging into Konoha to begin the attack, reported Kidomaru to him. A look of anger crossed Orochimaru's face. The fools, they are ruining the plan, he said furiously. Whatever had caused that had cost them a great advantage in the attack. Never mind, attack, he ordered to his men. Kill all who stand in your path. The sound and sand nins charged into Konoha, where they were met by some confused Anbu seeing intruders, and the battle began. Pandemonium swept across those in the arena as a panic had broken out of those unsure what was going on. Naruto had gotten separated from Haku and narrowly avoided being trampled by civilians. Hearing the sounds of battle, he looked out into the streets of Konoha and his eyes widened in shock. Sound nins, sand nins, leaf nins, they were fighting in the streets, facing one another, fighting to the death. He could only watch on as he saw a ninja get impaled by his enemy. What's going on? Why are we attacking Konoha? He shouted, even though his question wouldn't be answered by anyone. Looking around, he saw Haku. Haku, what's happening? The boy looked at him and sadly lowered his head. Naruto, I'm sorry, he said to him, causing him to look at him confused, not understanding. As confusion and panic spread throughout the entire village, one figure stood in the center of the arena, a sadistic smile on his face and 8 rings on his fingers, apparently the only one who seemed to be enjoying the mayhem and destruction, as he knew his lord would enjoy what was happening. He had caused this to happen, all the turmoil, all the panic, all the deaths that would be great in number when this was all over. Standing in the center of the arena, Kage Sosano laughed maniacally at the chaos that was spreading. Chapter 38. The Tragic Battle. Chaos and confusion swept throughout the hidden village of Leaf Konoha, as the allied forces of Sound and Sand charged into the village, determined to wipe it and all who opposed them off the face of the earth. The counter forces of the Leaf fought back, equally determined to save their homes. Vengeance was what drove the Sound nins, for what had happened to their lord's child, for the cruel mistreatment he had suffered for 12 long years ever since he had been born. They fought to punish the Leaf nins for what they had done to the boy. The invasion had started off unexpectedly, the original plan being for Kabuto Yakushi, servant of Orochimaru, to use a jutsu that would knock all the Leaf nins and their Anbu out. But unknown to the invaders or the defenders was a third small but deadly force that had plans of their own. Agents of Akatsuki with their own agenda which was unknown to most. Led by the servant of the Dark Lord Jashin, Kage Sosano, they had blown up a building and had caused the invaders to lose the advantage they would have had if Kabuto had been successful, forcing to go ahead and charge into the village. Standing on the rooftop of a home, a feminine-looking boy watched what was happening with a sad look on his face. He could have stopped this, could have told his best friend what his father was planning on doing. Yet he could not bring himself to break the boy's heart if he knew what would happen. Haku had not participated in any fights, using evasive tactics to avoid being seen or attacked. Although he had little love for the Leaf as one of them had killed his former master, he could not bring himself to engage in any battles. He could only watch in sadness and horror. Seeing a familiar girl out of the corner of his eye, Haku sighed and knew he had to make some amends. Naruto! Naruto! Naruto, where are you? Shouted a purple-haired kunoichi in the stands of the arena. Anko Mitarashi was searching for him and unable to find him. A sound nin appeared and charged her wielding a spear. She evaded the thrusts and stabs of his weapon and countered with a punch and stabbing him in the ribs with a kunai. She then defeated him out with a kick to his injured ribcage. Where is he? She asked herself. She had seen him for a moment when this whole mess started, but she had lost sight of him ever since then. She then felt a hand grip on her shoulder. Thinking it was an enemy, she turned around prepared to deal with him. To her surprise, it wasn't an enemy. Easy, you can't find the boy like this with so many enemies around, said Jiraiya to her. Anko's eyes narrowed at him and removed his hand. For now we have to deal with what's in front of us. You can look for him after our company is gone. 5 sand nins appeared in front of the kunoichi, and when she turned her head, Jiraiya was gone. Cursing the toad Sanin under her breath, she prepared to defend herself as they charged at her. She was not going to be defeated, not here and not until she had found the boy. While most of the ninjas and Anbu were fighting the invaders, a group was leading the civilians out of Konoha via a secret passageway. Kakashi along with Asuma and their squads were keeping guard in case any unwanted guests showed up. Noticing his pink-haired student was looking out at the battlefield, Kakashi made himself known. Sakura, she turned to look at him. I know what you are thinking, and after this last group has made it to safety, we will go out to find Naruto. Although we'll be in a lot of danger if we do so. Sakura nodded at him. Sensei, do we hate? He looked at her confused. We, Konoha, all of us, do we hate those that are different than us? People who we look at with disgust just because they look or feel different, or if they are from a different village. Is discrimination one of Leaf's values? Kakashi was about to ask her what had made her think that, yet when he stopped and thought about it, he had noticed it as well recently. Konoha, once the land where people could walk freely without fear, was changing into something the founders of the village did not want. He heard yelling and the two looked and saw Danzo, one of the councilmen with his bodyguards, yelling at the civilians, telling them to move out of his way, concerned with himself than he was with their lives. He was the only one of the council that wasn't out in the battle. Sakura, let's go. Kakashi then made a cut on his hand and summoned a small dog. Pakun, can you find the scent of Naruto Uzumaki? The canine sniffed the air and nodded. I smell a scent that's different from the others, I believe it is his. He said to them. Kakashi nodded. Lead us to it. He turned to Sakura, who nodded, and the two left. Wait. Forehead girl, what are you thinking? Shouted Ino at the sudden move. She then turned to her sensei, who nodded and mentioned for her and Shikamaru to go with them, and the two quickly ran after them. Elsewhere, a young man, a pair of bodies of sound, leaf, and sand surrounding him that he had slain, kneeled in the ground. Where are you, my prey? Where are you hiding? He whispered, hearing the sounds of battle. Determined to find him, he drew out his nodashi and blue flames appeared on the blade. Satsugaisha, find him, he ordered his sword, talking to it, pointing it in a direction. The sword glowed even fiercer as the enchanted blade could detect the demons and their vessels when they were close. He could feel it pull. In 2 directions, in the west and in the north. The other one must be that sand demon, I have no business with him. The north is where he should most likely be, and north I shall head. With that, Muta Daidoji headed off to his enemy. The boy he desired a battle with above all others. The Sound Four were engaged in battle with Anbu, and here they showed that despite their flaws, working together they were a match for anyone. Watching each other's back, the four were ready to do whatever it took to win. Kidomaru fired his arrows, Jirobo used his great strength, Tayuya casted genjutsus and her Duki, and Sakin and Ukin worked together like a well-oiled machine to easily defeat the Anbu and prepared for the next step of the plan. Are you 3 ready? Asked Sakin, the leader of the group, as they prepared to trap the Hokage. Tayuya, looking at the battlefield, was hoping to see Naruto, as she hadn't seen him ever since his fight at the arena where he revealed himself for who he really was. She was hoping he would show up. Tayuya, shouted Kidomaru at her, and she turned to look at them. You ready? Why, yeah, let's do this. The 4 then casted a jutsu that would trap the Hokage and make it impossible for him to get out without endangering himself and part of the village. The 4 managed to successfully cast the jutsu trapping Sarutobi. Alright, now it's up to Orochimaru-sama, said Sakin as they looked up at the trapped building, trying to see if they could witness the fight that would soon happen. Sarutobi had sensed what had happened and knew the predicament that he was in. He had been prepared to cast jutsus from above that would send the invaders running where he realized he had been goaded to get on his rooftop of his tower as it was what the mastermind of this invasion had wanted. He then heard a slight sound of a person landing and he slowly turned around and saw a man wearing the robes of the Kage. The man then reached up and removed the mask and outfit revealing himself underneath. Orochimaru, is your desire for revenge as consuming as I thought? Sarutobi said to him. Ku, you knew the day Naruto was born that I vowed I would destroy this place. Orochimaru replied with a chuckle. At what cost though? Will you risk the love of your son for vengeance? Responded Sarutobi. Orochimaru glared at him, he loved his son, and no one could ever question that. Everything he had done for the past 12 years was for him. He would suffer the agony of hell itself to save him. I know you love him, but will he love you for what you are doing? Silence, old fool. Your time and Konoha's time has come. Sarutobi sighed and closed his eyes and thought back to that fateful day and what Naruto had endured for all of his life. What had happened to his beloved Konoha? This was not the village he had grown to love and sworn to defend with his life, which he had taught his prized students. His ancestors and the first and second Hokages did not envision this. He knew the answer, it was a disease, a cancer that Konoha had. The belief that those who were of different villages were inferior and not as good as those of the leaf. Where if you were different you were an outcast. Perhaps during the Great Wars this had started to happen. Where if you weren't the same you were given looks of suspicion and distrust. The sickness must be cured, he knew that. Yet he knew he would not live long enough to see his beloved home cured of the disease. It would be up to future generations to heal it. Orochimaru. He then reached up and removes his own robes revealing the battle outfit he wore underneath. Orochimaru seeing this summoned his Kusanagi and went into a stance. Let us begin. Thunder clouds gathered in the sky as the two stared off prepared to do battle. It looks like it is going to rain soon, perfect. Said a figure who noticed the clouds as well, he was alone in the arena, the only soul in it. 8 rings were on his fingers as he looked at the carnage that was happening. It was beautiful in his eyes. The screams and sounds of battle soothing to him. Now it is time for the second part of my plan. Raising his hands and turning them into a fist, the rings glowed and he fired a burst of energy from them at the ground as Kage began chanting. He then produced 2 items, a mask shaped like a demon, the other a piece of cloth that had the word fire on it. Chanting still, he tossed them into the ground and smiled as the dark jutsu he had learned through 3 days of prayer was working. 2 forms appeared, one a masked figure with a great axe, the other with blondish brown hair wearing face paint over his eyes. They appeared to be living, but if you looked at them they weren't alive either. Their eyes were dull and lifeless and they seemed to have no will in their bodies as they stood there. Just mere husks, barely more than a puppet. The jutsu required a personal object of the fallen and consumed much energy and chakra from the user, which was why he needed the rings so he would still have strength. Once successful, the dead would be reborn but unable to do anything on their own. Shinjiro, Tsushigumo. Kage called out to them as they were under his control. Find the fox vessel, kill all who stand in your way, now go. The 2 grunted the only sound they could make and followed him out of the arena. Naruto, his mind confused with all that was going on, could only wander the streets and look on. What was happening here? Why were they attacking Konoha? He was in the center and saw 2 different groups. You, demon, prepare to die, shouted a pair of leaf nins seeing him. Lord Naruto, we shall defeat them, said a trio of sound nins. The 2 groups started to charge one another before Naruto could stop either group when suddenly a flash happened and 2 of the sound nins fell dead, cuts on their throats. Another flash and a leaf fell, a cut on his chest. A dark figure appeared and flipped over the remaining leaf nin and stabbed the remaining sound nin in the stomach. He then turned around and did a horizontal slash right up the leaf ninja's face. Naruto saw the ninja who raised his head and charged him and leapt and did a somersault in the air and slashed at him vertically. When he landed, Naruto dodged the attack as the assassin had targeted him. It is time for you to come with us, vessel of Kyuubi, said Hanzo to him. Naruto glared at him and reached towards his sword. Conscious or unconscious, I will take you to my master, Hanzo said quietly, his voice a whisper as he drew his scythes. I'm getting really tired of this. If you and the rest of you guys want me so bad, then come and get me, shouted Naruto, drawing out his Kusanagi. So be it. Faster than he could blink, Hanzo appeared in front of him, slashing with his scythes. Naruto narrowly dodged the attacks. Hanzo didn't let up and continued his attacks, mixing in kicks as well at him. This guy, he's even faster than Yuho was. Naruto thought to himself as it was nearly impossible to read his movements due to his lightning-like speed that he possessed. He could barely get his sword up to defend in time and more than once felt the scythes cut into his skin. By the time he had attacked, the ninja had disappeared like an illusion. It was impossible for the average person to catch on to his movements. "Be swallowed by darkness," shouted Hanzo casting a jutsu. Suddenly Naruto found himself in a pitch-black area and he couldn't see a thing, not even his hand in front of his face. He couldn't see, hear, or do anything. He then felt a stabbing pain on his shoulder, and then a kick to his side. He was then punched in the face and he was out of the shadow-like realm. Hanzo was standing on a bench, one of his scythes having blood, Naruto's blood on it. He wasn't even trying, it seemed like. You cannot defeat the shadows, nor can you defeat the shadow of aim, for darkness is eternal, everlasting. Naruto growled under his throat and switched to his kusarigama. Twirling the metal ball part overhead, he threw it at him, who evaded, landing on a nearby table. Naruto, not letting up, charged him again, tossing the kama part of it this time. Hanzo evaded as he was expertly dodging Naruto's attacks. He tossed shurikens at him at blinding speed, so fast it seemed as if they just appeared. Naruto barely managed to avoid the sharpened stars. Hasno was quick and deadly, but his hands seemed to be the fastest. The secret to that were blue metal bracelets he wore under his outfit on his arms. The two pieces of equipment had multiplied his already deadly speed, making him truly like a shadow. But his hands had gotten much faster than his legs thanks to them. Whenever he fought, he always was the first person to strike first and often the killing blow. Such items were common that ninjas would use to increase their abilities by wearing them, but Hanzo's bracers were mightier than most. "Surrender, for only defeat lays ahead against me, fox vessel." Naruto glared at him. "The name's Naruto Uzumaki, got it? And the day I surrender to you is the day the sky turns green." Hanzo brought his scythes, one of which had his blood on it, up. "Very well, I shall take you to my master, near death's door if need be." Elsewhere, Kakashi and Sakura along with Ino and Shikamaru were on the trail hoping to find him. As they made their way, they come across two figures. "Hey, wait a sec, isn't that the guy that?" Shikamaru started to say when the figure threw a fireball at him, which the lazy boy quickly dodged, not wanting to be burned to a crisp. Sakura recognized the familiar ninja. "But you're supposed to be dead. Naruto defeated you," she shouted in shock at seeing him again. The figure merely grunted in response and threw another fireball, which they dodged. "So you recognize this pitiful shell of a human being?" said Kage Sosano. Kakashi looked at the follower of Jashin. You did this, didn't you?" Kage laughed. "I resurrected this wretched being along with another. Although alive, they lack the ability to control themselves. They are little more than pawns for me to use." Sakura looked at him. "You resurrected your own comrades and used them like this? You monster," she shouted, accusing him. Kage scoffed at them. "I have no time to waste with the likes of you. Shinjiro," he shouted, giving him a command. "Destroy them." He then disappeared, leaving them behind with the fire ninja, who grunted again and flames appeared on his hands. "Damn, all of you take Pakun and leave. I'll send him back to where he came from," said Kakashi to them. But Sakura started to say, "Now," he ordered them, which they reluctantly did so. As they left, Kakashi then found himself trapped in the dome-like sphere that Naruto himself was in. Getting into a stance, he prepared to do battle with the fire nin. In another area of Konoha, the savage Tsushigumo, who got separated from the others, was on a rampage, attacking anyone in sight. Although he was under Kage's control, the Takeda's lust for death and battle was still in him, even as a mindless being. When he was alive, he was able to control it, but now he was little more than a wild beast, using his axe to spread destruction and to kill. Hinata Hyuga had gotten separated from her clan and her teammates, and right now was trying to get a few children to safety when she heard a roar behind her. Her eyes widened in shock as she saw the wild Tsushigumo appear back from the dead. Swallowing her fear, she told them to go on without her, as she had to give them time to escape, even at the cost of her own life. The Takeda, seeing her, charged her and slashed at her with his axe that would have taken her head off. Hinata dodged it and, activating her Bukagen, struck him with a few hits, but to her surprise he showed no signs of being affected by her Juken. He went to slice her in half horizontally and she evaded again, but she did not know how long she could continue. He again attacked, this time bringing it downwards, and when she went to move out of the way and ran a bit, she felt pain go through her leg as she twisted it and fell to the ground. She winced and reached towards her leg, seeing that she had sprained it when she tried to move. Tsushigumo brought his axe up and prepared to kill her. Hinata closed her eyes, bracing for the blow. It never came. Hinata, noticing that he had stopped, opened her eyes and saw to her surprise that he was frozen solid and covered in ice and unable to move a muscle. But only one person she knew could use ice. That won't hold him for long. She saw a familiar feminine boy leap down. At the most he'll be like that for 10 minutes. Haku. Hinata shouted, glad to see him, yet a part of her was upset. The boy looked at her and kneeled beside her. Are you hurt? My ankle is hurt. She stuttered out. He gently rolled up her pant leg and looked at the sprain. He felt the leg to see what part of her ankle had been injured, unaware of the blush that was on her face. You won't be able to walk for a while, he said, getting out bandages to use on her ankle. Haku, what is going on? Why are you attacking us? She said, a part of her wanting him to go away. Haku continued working on her ankle. I wish I knew. I have detested this with my entire body, as I can't stand what is going on. Yet you fight and hurt my friends and family, she said boldly with a frown. The boy remained quiet and she noticed he wasn't wearing his mask he usually had on when he fought. She then realized that he hadn't been involved in any fights whatsoever. He had done nothing. Haku looked at her ankle. It should be fine now. Hinata attempted to stand, but to no avail, it wasn't going to be able to support her. Haku, seeing this, scooped the surprised girl up, holding her in his arms. You may not want anything to do with me after this, Hinata, and if so, I understand. There has to be a place for me to take you. Where is it? Hinata remained quiet. She'd be giving up the secret location if she told him. A small part of her felt that he would use that to lure the rest of the invaders in. But she knew she could trust him. Giving him the instructions, he nodded and carried her off, unaware of Tsushigumo already showing signs of breaking free. The battle raged on in Konoha as neither side showed any sign whatsoever of winning. Anko leaned her tired body against a wall. The 12th fight she had won, but she knew she could not rest, not yet, as she still had to find the boy. The Sound Trio fought ferociously for their friend and comrade. A lone figure was slowly heading towards what he believed to be his destiny. Fire leapt into the air from the dome due to Shinjiro's and Kakashi's battle. Neither side was willing to give the other any quarter. Jiraiya looked around at one scene where a large group of ninjas had fought against each other. All in this part of the area were dead, some it seemed still fighting even in death. He had been involved in the battle, defeating some giant snakes that had been summoned. Looking around, he saw one body start to move. Walking towards it, he saw it was a Sound Nin, no more than 15 years old, with his life ahead of him, trying to crawl on his belly. The veil that some Sound Nins wear to cover their face was gone, revealing his features. Hearing him approach, he turned his head with great difficulty and saw him. Jiraiya, having seen many battles in his lifetime, could tell he didn't have much longer to go. What's your name, boy? He asked. The ninja looked at him curiously and with great effort brought his lips together to form a word. Benkei, the Sound Nin said, using all of his remaining energy that was left. Jiraiya looked at him and brought a hand down and closed his eyes for him so he could rest, and looked back up at the chaos. On the rooftop, Orochimaru and Sarutobi were engaged in battle, each expertly dodging and countering the other's attacks with their own move. Orochimaru backed up and smirked and produced 3 coffins. I believe it's time for some friends to show up. Before he could activate the middle one, it was destroyed by Sarutobi's quick thinking, casting a fireball at it. Orochimaru glared at him, as that was the one that had the wretched Yondaime in it. Very well, I'll only need the first and second to do away with you. He spat and activated the other 2 coffins, and they stepped out. Sarutobi grimaced but stood unwavering in the face of what would be certain death against 2 Hokages and a Sannin. Naruto, still engaged in battle with Hanzo, believed he was finally figuring out a pattern to his attacks. Naruto! Naruto! Shouted a voice in his head. What Kyuubi? Muttered Naruto in annoyance. Look, brat, if we're going by points here, he's winning by 1,000, listen up. Although his speed is his greatest strength, it is also his greatest weakness. Huh. Some warriors win by speed, yes, but a true warrior wins by knowing how to improvise his attacks when they are already in motion. Already in motion. Yes, you baka, shouted Kyuubi, irritated at him. If you try improvising your attacks instead of hoping what you try hits him, you'll do a lot better. Hanzo attacked him again, but this time Naruto was ready for him, sword drawn. Hoping that Kyuubi's advice would work, he waited for him to strike. A scythe came near his chest ready to impale him. Naruto sent the blade upwards, but instead during midway plunged it forward towards his abdomen. Hanzo, not expecting the attack, was caught off guard and felt a small jab into it. Backing up, he reached towards his abdomen to check the minor wound. Surprised that he had hit him, he prepared to attack again. He charged and went to slice him with both scythes. Naruto went to slash at him, but during mid-swing he brought the sword up and stopped the blades from getting near him, effectively blocking the attack. A look of shock was on Hanzo's face, as no one had ever blocked his attacks. "What's wrong? I thought you were supposed to be fast," taunted Naruto with a grin, egging him on. It became so clear to him now. He was able to read Hanzo's movements much easier now and how to deflect, block, and get in past his defenses. Hanzo threw kunai at him, but Naruto deflected them with his sword. He then charged him, sword drawn, but when he got close he switched to his kusarigama and slammed the metal ball into his ribs, forcing him to back up, clutching his ribcage. "This isn't possible," shouted Hanzo, the loudest he had ever said anything. He again went to hit him with his scythes, but Naruto was effectively nullifying his speed by going one way with a weapon but then the next. Hanzo, despite his speed, could not do the same, or because of his speed he could not. His hands moved faster than any part of his body, but they moved so fast he could not get them under control and slow them down so he could counter and block his moves. Naruto grinned. Could Hanzo read his movements? As well as he attacked. He made a clone and the two attacked him with taijutsu, again confusing him with their tactics as he could not keep up. The two went high but then dropped low and delivered two kicks to his jaw, sending him up into the air. Naruto was then launched into the air by the clone, and during his descent lining him up with Hanzo did a flip in the air, his foot colliding with his body, sending waves of impact throughout his body. Hanzo pulled himself up. "You are good," he said, breathing hard as Naruto knew he had done some damage. He then charged him again, slashing and striking wildly, fighting fiercely, determined to end this. Naruto, defending with his kusanagi, was setting up blocks before his attacks began. Hanzo's speed again was his nemesis, as he could not improvise and could not counter as well in time like his slower opponent, and Naruto added another counter, bringing his foot up in line with his stomach when they were close, to do even more damage. Hanzo yelled in pain as Naruto's foot collided with his damaged ribcage and went on the offensive as Naruto had switched back to his kusarigama. Naruto attacked with the kama part of the weapon at him. Hanzo's scythe banged against it, but Naruto had already sent the metal ball smashing into his ribs. Hanzo leapt away and clutched his ribs, and Naruto could tell that that blow had been serious, as at least 2 or more ribs had been broken by the heavy ball, causing him to bleed on the inside. To his credit, Hanzo showed no signs of fatigue despite his wounds and kept up. He even tried countering with his own foot to counter Naruto's, but the wounds were slowly starting to show and he was weakening. Naruto again with his sword was in place for all blocks and parries, and cunningly using his third counter, his foot, against him. Hanzo couldn't help but lurch forward in severe pain, and then he was back on the defensive, reacting desperately as this demon who could read every move he was doing relentlessly waded in. His sword flashed out ahead, knocking one scythe out of his hand. Hanzo went to slam his foot against his belly, but Naruto was the faster, and in a sudden explosion of pure agony, Hanzo realized that he could not win against him, as his greatest ability had turned into his biggest foe. Naruto pressed his sword, the tip of it lined against his ribs. For a brief instant the two stared eye to eye. "You are good," Naruto said to him. "But I'm better." He then plunged kusanagi deep into Hanzo's heart and pulled it out, ending the assassin's life. Far away from the fight, Gaara was disappointed. He was about to win against his opponent Sasuke Uchiha, but he felt nothing. He wasn't even feeling like killing him. The Uchiha was good, but in the end Gaara had prevailed. Sasuke tried to pull himself up and was on one knee, his hand clutching his cursed seal. To Gaara it was meaningless. "What is my purpose for living?" he shouted angrily at the sky, full of anger, demanding that they answer him. At that same time Naruto had just defeated Hanzo. He then sensed it. A unique ninja just like him had won. He realized who it was, and so did the demon inside him. I will find my purpose for living, even if that means I have to kill everyone. And I'll start with you, Fox." He then disappeared in a whirlwind of sand. Sasuke pulled himself up and looked towards the direction Gaara had been doing so. "Naruto, what the heck are you doing this time?" Looking around, Naruto realized that the fight was still going on. Looking at the Hokage's tower, which was covered by a seal, he knew he had to go there and find out what was going on. Looking at Hanzo's body, he noticed 2 metal bracelets. He had come into contact with something metal when he had fought him. They seemed ordinarily, but he could tell there was something about them. "To the victor," said Kyuubi to him, and he went to take them. But then he felt a familiar presence, the presence of a person he hated. Slowly he turned around and he saw him walking toward him. He carried his nodashi easily, the blade sheathed for now. A smile was on his face as he soon came within 10 feet. "I have waited for this for so long. We shall have our final battle here," said Muta Daidoji, smiling. He then noticed Hanzo's body. "So you defeated Hanzo, that's half of us you've defeated. Even I am impressed, as he assassin was someone I respected as a solid fighter." Naruto drew his reach towards his own blade. "Remember what I said, Muta. Before the exams are over I am going to kill you," he said, his eyes slowly turning red. "Words are cheap, you know that, but don't worry, I'll give you a death that will be remembered forever." Before either of them could start, a whirlwind of sand appeared in the middle of the village center and revealed itself to be Gaara. Fox," he said with a growl, a psychotic look on his face. Naruto looked at him confused, not understanding why he was here. "The time has come for me to find out my purpose in life, and you shall help show it." Muta glared at the intruder of their fight. "Be gone, fool, I have no business with you. But I have no protests about killing 2 demons in one battle." Naruto sighed. He knew he would have to fight him sooner or later. "Great, I don't suppose you two will just kill each other and save me the trouble." "Muta, I'll deal with you first. Gaara, I'll take care of you afterwards." "No," snarled Gaara, losing control. "We will fight this instant, I will not be denied." Muta scoffed and slowly drew out his nodashi, which glowed with bright blue flames due to being so close to the both of them. "It appears we are having a free-for-all." Naruto shook his head. "Fine, if I have to I'll defeat the both of you at once." The 3 ninjas slowly each got into his preferred stance of fighting and slowly circled one another, prepared to begin the battle. 3 will fight. Only one will win. Chapter 39, The Battles Ends and Sarutobi's Secret. A 3-way battle was going in the center of Konoha, the 3 combatants ignoring all that was going in elsewhere, only concentrating on the 2 other adversaries in their path. The 3, each vowing to defeat the other, went all out against the other, with each using the best of his abilities. Naruto Uzumaki blocked Muta's thrusts of his naginata that he had summoned with his sword. The 2 were bitter rivals. Ever since their first meeting a few months ago in the territory of sound, it seemed destiny had dictated they would be sworn enemies. They had had other minor skirmishes, such as in the Forest of Death and in Konoha itself 1 month ago, but nothing had come of them. But now they were fighting here amidst all the chaos. But they were not alone. A wildcard, Gaara no Subaku, had entered the fray, determined to find out what his true purpose in life had joined them, turning the one-on-one duel into a 3-way battle to the death. The vessel of the sand demon Shukaku was nearly psychotic and would stop at nothing to discover what his goal in life was. Sound, rain, and sand, 3 skilled ninjas determined to defeat the other. Muta Daidoji, using his naginata, twirled it expertly and attacked Naruto, who used his speed to effectively block and parry his moves. Naruto backed him away a couple feet, and during the open space he had sent his kusanagi away and pulled out his kusarigama. Twirling the metal ball overhead, he sent it at him. Muta dodged it but saw that Naruto was now charging him, the kama in hand, intent on impaling him with it, as he had used the ball as a diversion to leave him open. But before Naruto was able to slay him, he was suddenly surrounded by sand. The sand encircled itself around him and then trapped him, binding him and making it difficult to move. Naruto turned his head and saw Gaara, a cruel smile on his face, ready to clutch his head into a fist and activate the desert funeral. Naruto struggled, but to no avail, as he was prepared to kill him. But suddenly Naruto was freed unexpectedly by Muta, who had summoned his enchanted sword, which was designed to fight demons and counter their attacks, and cut him free. Naruto landed on his feet. A growl escaped from Gaara at the interference. Naruto looked over at Muta, who stared hard at him. "Don't think I saved you out of kindness. I am the only one who is allowed to defeat." He snarled at Naruto and lunged at him with his Nodashi. Naruto blocked the glowing sword with his Kama and felt as if the flames shone on it wanted to feed on him. He then heard Gaara laugh and looked and saw that Gaara had sent an attack right at them kunais made out of hardened sand. Forcing Muta back, he then made hand symbols. Oto Shoheki no Jutsu. Activating the sound barrier. Gaara's attack was nullified by it. He then threw the metal ball at him, but it was deflected by the sand that always protected him. Naruto charged him with his Kusarigama. He went for a stabbing move right towards his neck, but it was countered by the sand. He threw the metal ball as well at his head, but it too was countered. Oto Kage Bushin no Jutsu. He shouted, making hand symbols and summoning 40 clones. The clones charged him, some having a kunai drawn. Gaara scoffed, not impressed, as his sand protected him from their attacks. He then destroyed them with his sand and seeming to have not been affected by the sonic booms they made. Mere clones cannot defeat me. He snarled at Naruto, who unexpectedly grinned. I know, look behind you, dumbass. Gaara turned his head and his eyes widened in shock, as while the clones had distracted him, the real Naruto cunningly had set the building of a store behind him with explosive tags ready to go off. The tags exploded, causing rubble to fall on top of Gaara, who attempted to cover himself as he was buried by the debris. Naruto looked at the fallen rubble, apparently burying him. Rest in peace, he said to him, thinking it was done. He then heard the sound of running and cursed, remembering he was not alone. He turned around and was met with a running dropkick from Muta, knocking him into a wall, stunning him. Now our battle begins, shouted Muta, who attempted to decapitate him wielding his blade. Naruto quickly regained his senses and moved out of the way and summoned his own sword and brought it up and blocked his attacks. His anger growing inside him, he went on the offensive, attacking Muta with everything he had, driving him back. The two rivals went into a brutal series of moves, each showing their skills with the blade. Muta had trained his whole 16 years with the sword, while Naruto's father, who was an expert swordsman, had taught him nearly everything he knew in the past couple of months, and he learned very quickly. The two fought back and forth, each one expertly avoiding and parrying the other's moves. But then Muta revealed his ace in the hole. He brought 2 fingers to his throat, rubbing it, and then opened his mouth and spat out a green mist-like substance right into Naruto's unguarded face. A cry of pain and shock came from Naruto, as part of his face was covered by it and some of it got into his eyes. He was forced to go onto the defensive, desperately trying to defend himself and clear his vision. He was knocked to the ground, his vision still blurred, and could see the flash of Muta's blade being brought up. He then felt it come down and it cut through something. His vision starting to clear, he looked at what had been attacked. His Hittite 8, the sound Hittite 8, the symbol of his home and village. Muta had sliced it off and was now holding it as a way of insulting him. An arrogant smirk was on his face as he looked at the headband and threw it away. Anger, indescribable anger, swelled up inside Naruto that very instant. He had insulted him, he had insulted his friends and comrades. He had insulted his village. He had insulted all that he valued. His eyes now a murderous red, he raised up, no longer being affected by the poisonous mist, and charged him, startling him with his rage. He went on the offensive, showing no mercy, determined to kill him no matter what the cost. He forced back into a wall and Muta leapt up onto the building, and Naruto quickly followed him, leaping up onto it and continued his assault. Naruto, consumed by his rage, overpowered him. He shoulder tackled him off his feet to the roof and brought his sword down, prepared to kill him. When suddenly a whirlwind of sand erupted from the rubble and a familiar figure appeared on the roof. "You will not dispose of me so easily," snarled Gaara on the roof with them. He then fired a burst of sand at Naruto, knocking him off the roof and landing on the ground on his back. He then turned his attention to Muta and sent a burst at him. Muta kept up and bringing his Nodashi in a slashing motion cut through the sand and charged him. Gaara's sand went to protect him, but to his surprise the blade cut through the sand unchallenged and he had to move his head out of the way. He glared at Muta, who then made hand symbols and his sword started to glow with purple electricity. He fired a bolt of lightning right at him, which Gaara responded by summoning a wave of sand to block it. "So you know lightning jutsus?" growled Gaara at him. Muta did more hand symbols and small bolts of lightning erupted from his fingertips at him. Although he preferred to fight with weapons, Muta was also skilled in lightning jutsu as well. Muta fired another bolt of lightning from his Nodashi, which Gaara countered by making a statue of himself to take the blow in his place. Muta went to do it again when he was attacked from behind by Naruto, who had used the opportunity to ambush him. The three ninjas looked at one another, their gaze never leaving the other. The battle was currently at a standstill. Orochimaru using his own Kusanagi battled Sarutobi, who used his summoned club he had summoned Emna the Monkey King to counter with. The Sandaime then saw the first Hokage cast a jutsu summoning a blizzard of ice at him. Sarutobi countered it and stopped the other Hokage from casting his as well. Orochimaru called for them to come to him and the two first rulers of Konoha did so. I didn't expect any less from you, my former sensei, though it appears that sometimes you are not into this battle 100%. Sarutobi said nothing but instead casted a jutsu at him, forcing him to leap away. Maybe it is old age, but I can sense you're not fighting with everything you have, he said to him, who remained quiet. This made Orochimaru frown. If you think you can make me back off just because you're my former teacher and you do not wish to fight me, you will be greatly disappointed. He growled and ordered the two to attack him. Sarutobi prepared himself as they came near him. Orochimaru, if you only knew what was going on inside my heart right now. Elsewhere, Enko Mitarashi was about ready to give up. Blood was on her, some of it her own, most of it from enemies. She had searched everywhere, but she was unable to find the boy. Her body was sore and tired. Maybe they'll never be reunited again. Enko-san, shouted a female voice. She turned her head and saw Sakura Haruno carrying a small dog. Accompanying her was Ino and Shikamaru. Are you alright? I'm fine. What are you doing out here? You could be killed, she said to them. We think we can locate Naruto by using Pakun, exclaimed Sakura, causing her eyes to widen. What? You can find him? Where is he? She shouted, grabbing Sakura by the shoulder and shaking her, causing her to become dizzy. Ino looked around nervously as they could hear the sounds of battle. I know you want to find him, forehead girl, but we could be in big trouble here if we're not careful. We should head back. Enko frowned at her. We're not leaving, she said, her tone telling them it was futile to argue with her. Tell me where he is. The small dog looked around, not really sure he should tell them. He's nearby, but we should follow Blondie's advice and get out of here. I'm not a cat, so I only got one life. He was interrupted when Enko pulled him out of Sakura's arms. Tell me where he is or else I'll see to it you won't be able to have a litter, she shouted, angrily shaking him like a rag doll. Enko, shouted Sakura, Ino, and Shikamaru all at once, trying to keep her from killing the poor dog. All right, I picked up his scent in the center, that's where he should be at. But there are some powerful scents there as well, said Pakun, trying to clear the cobwebs. Enko nodded. All right, you three stay with me, we're going to find Naruto. In a dome completely made out of fire, Hitaki Kakashi rolled across the ground, avoiding the flames of the mindless Shinjiro. His mask was down, exposing his Sharingan eye, and had gotten one of Shinjiro's fire jutsus to use as his own. Despite that, he still could not be able to do any damage to the fire nin who kept him at bay with his attacks. He could not get in close as Shinjiro fired continuous attacks at him. Although he had posed as a genin in the exams, it was clear to Kakashi he was at least an upper chunin. Now I know why Naruto had such trouble against you, Kakashi muttered under his breath. Shinjiro didn't say anything but fired a stream of fire at him. Dodging it, Kakashi realized he was too close to the flames that had trapped them in the dome and felt them lick at his back, narrowly avoiding them. A few inches closer and he would have been burned by them. The fire burned fiercely, desiring the flesh of one of the combatants to feed on. Shinjiro threw another fireball at him, but Kakashi was ready for it this time. With his Sharingan activated, able to read his movements, he began zigzagging across the area, heading one way and then the next way, expertly avoiding his attacks, and when he got in close to him he leapt up and doing a flip in the air kicked him in the chest, knocking him right into the flames. A scream of pain erupted from Shinjiro as his back was scorched mercilessly by the dome. Managing to pull away, his back was covered with burns and markings at least 3rd degree. Kakashi thought that might be it, but he knew he was wrong as flames erupted from his hands. Remembering that he had used this move to nearly kill Naruto at the exams, Kakashi knew he could not get away and he only had one chance. Making hand symbols, lightning started to form around him and gather around his arm as he concentrated hard. I only got one chance, so I hope this works, he said, prepared to activate his jutsu. Shinjiro released a wave of flames from his hands at the same moment Kakashi activated his S-class move. Reikiri, he shouted and charged him, his hand covered in electricity. He thrusted his hand forward into the flames and howled in pain but pressed on, slowly conquering the fire. Shinjiro, seeing that he was surviving his ultimate attack, attempted to add more pressure, but Kakashi would not be denied as he marched his way through the flames and thrusted his arm forward right at Shinjiro's chest, who attempted to move. The move ripped right through his chest, impaling him through the heart. A look of shock was on his face as Kakashi finished the jutsu and let him fall to the ground. The moment he hit the ground, Shinjiro turned and faded into dust, ending the fire ninja's life for the second time. The fire dome vanished as Kakashi clutched his burnt hand. "That's something I won't try again," he said, wincing at his injured arm. "But there's no time to wonder how I could have ended it differently. Right now I gotta find Sakura and the others to make sure they're okay." At the bottom of the Hokage's tower, the Sound Four were looking on. Their job was to stay here and make sure the jutsu was still on to prevent anyone from interfering in the battle going up on the top. "Hey," said Kidomaru, keeping a lookout. "That fire that we saw earlier has gone out. Something must have happened to it. Probably just some water was used on it," mused Sakin, the leader of the group. Tayuya, who wasn't paying attention, was wondering where Naruto was at. She hadn't seen him ever since he had revealed himself. Was he out there fighting in the chaos? Or had he been captured by the Leaf? If they have, I swear I'll kill each and every one of these assholes who knew where he was, as he had not been seen. There appears to be a commotion going on in the center," said Kidomaru, drawing her attention. "Wasn't that sand vessel supposed to be there?" asked Jirobo. Tayuya then spoke up. "This damn village is being stubborn as hell. Our forces have yet to overpower them. We might be here for a long time." Sakin looked at her. "Well, once Orochimaru defeats the ruler here, we should be able to win easily." Tayuya ignored him and continued looking out, wondering where he could be. Elsewhere, Haku was carrying Hinata in his arms, taking her to the secret entrance. She had given him directions and told him that the entrance was near the mountain of the carved past Hokages hidden in the rocks. As he took her there and was nearing it, he heard an angry voice. "Hinata, put her down, you sound garbage," shouted a boy with a dog and red markings on his face. He attempted to attack Haku, who leapt out of the way, but then saw he was surrounded by 3 other Leaf ninjas and he recognized them. His eyes narrowed when he saw Neji Hyuga. "Hinata, what have you done? You've led the enemy to our hideout," shouted Neji at her, who Haku put down her ankle, able to support her now. Haku put up his hands, indicating he didn't want any trouble from them. But Neji Hyo only," Hinata started to say, only to be cut off. "You fool, he's a spy. He'll lead the rest of them to us. How could you trust him?" he shouted at her, causing Haku to get upset at the way he was treating her. "Leave her alone," he shouted, rare anger in his voice. "I took her here 'cause she was injured. If I hadn't, she would have been killed. Is that what you wanted, to have your cousin die?" he said angrily at him, who glared at him. Shino Aburame, a bandage wrapped across his head from Kage's earlier attack, spoke up. "I know you only did what you believe was right, but we cannot allow you to leave now that you know of our hideout where the civilians are at." Neji then spoke up. "I will see to it that you die this time." Haku got into a defensive stance as Neji stepped forward, but unexpectedly Hinata got in between them. "Stop. Be both of you," she shouted, raising her voice, keeping them from fighting. "You don't have to fight. Hinata, he's an enemy. If he leaves, he'll just—" Neji was then cut off when they heard a loud roar. The ninjas turned around and saw Tsushiguma wielding his axe appear, having followed Haku's trail. Neji glared at Haku, thinking what he believed was true. "See, he has led him to us." Tsushiguma, in a mindless rage, saw Haku and, remembering him, charged him, preparing to cut him in half with his axe. Haku evaded the moves but then saw a shuriken fly overhead and hit him. He turned around and saw that it was Tenten who did it, but he wasn't sure if she was aiming for him instead. Knowing he had to deal with one enemy at a time, he drew Senbon. "I don't know how you came back to life, but this time I'll make sure you don't." He threw them at him but saw that despite he had done damage to him, Tsushiguma seemingly felt no damage. The mindless warrior attacked with his axe, keeping Haku on the defensive with even greater ferocity than it had been in the preliminary fights. Haku narrowly evaded each attack and made hand symbols, and casting a jutsu froze the ground, causing Tsushiguma to lose his balance and fall. Haku threw Senbon, and mixture of ice kunai made from his bloodline, at him, but even though Tsushiguma made no attempt to block and was taking hits, he did not seem to care as he went back on the offensive. Then an attack went past him and struck Tsushiguma, which then covered itself on him. Haku then noticed that they were bugs and they were feeding on his flesh. Turning around, he saw Shino had used the move to attack Tsushiguma. The bugs should have consumed Tsushigumo of his chakra, but instead they didn't seem to really bother him. Neji then dashed in front of him and hit him in the chest with his Jukin, which should have sealed his points. But it had little effect as well. Tsushigumo backhanded Neji across the face and deflected Tenten's weapons with his axe. He ignored Kiba and Akamaru's attacks and laid them low with a powerful punch. Neji, refusing to lose, activated his Kaden move and knocked him back a couple of feet, but Tsushigumo came on, still roaring with each blow in his mindless lust for destruction and death. Haku then intervened by activating his bloodline right when he was about to attack Neji, surprising the prodigy, and surrounded him with ice mirrors. Like before, he hurled dozens of Senbon and Kunai at him, this time mixing in shuriken as well, as there was nowhere for him to go. Haku, seeing him fall down to one knee, dispelled the jutsu thinking it was down, but Tsushigumo stood up unexpectedly and roared. "You're kidding me, all that and he's still not going down." Tsushigumo charged them and hit Tenten with the back of his axe, stunning her momentarily. He then tackled Shino, who was in the midst of casting a jutsu, and threw him against the stone wall. He was struck from behind by Neji, but he slashed at him with his axe into his shoulder, injuring it. Haku went to stop him, but Tsushigumo batted his attacks aside. Hinata then saw him look at her and raised his axe up, and she was petrified with fear, unable to move. Haku, getting up, saw what was about to happen. Hinata, quickly making hand symbols, he hoped he could do it in time and casted a jutsu at him right as he neared Hinata. The axe was starting to come down and split her skull when it was stopped, and so was Tsushigumo, who was covered in ice, frozen solid. Haku then turned to Neji, who was getting up. "End it now," he shouted at him before he could get free again. Neji, seeing an opening, rushed forward and activated his best move. He hit him and then started to multiply his hits from 4 to 8 to 16 all the way up to 64. The statue of Tsushigumo shattered after all the blows his head knocked off, as well as it shattered into pieces. Like before with Shinjiro, his remains turned to dust. The 6 of them recovered and Haku stood up and turned to leave. "Wait a second, Haku," he heard Neji, who ran up to him clutching his injured shoulder. "I'm not letting you leave. You have my word that I will not give away your hiding spot," said Haku, matching the intensity of his glare. "The words of an enemy cannot be trusted," said Neji. "My words can be," responded Haku, as the two stared hard at one another for several long seconds. "Fine, go, but if I ever see you again I will see to it that your head is removed from your body," he warned, but Haku knew it was an empty threat. Neji turned to leave, followed by the rest back into the hideout. Haku started to leave as well, but stopped hearing a voice. "Haku, wait." Hinata ran up to him and the two looked at one another. Thank you for saving my life again." Haku smiled at her. "It was nothing, Hinata. Will I ever see you again?" Again Haku smiled. "That depends, do you want to see me again?" Hinata nodded, a blush on her face, and he took her hand and locked his pinky with her own. "Then I promise that I'll see you again, although it'll have to be when your cousin's not around," he said as the two pinky sweared. Hinata smiled and boldly leaned up and kissed him on the cheek. She leaned back down and blushed, her face crimson, realizing what she just did, as a blush was on his face as well. She twiddled her fingers, unaware what to do next when he spoke up. "Until we meet again, Hinata." He bowed politely to her and left, leaving her standing there awaiting their next meeting. The battle in Konoha was still going on, yet it appeared that forces of sand and sound were starting to gain the upper hand. Grunts of battle and fierce fighting was happening as each side fought. One particularly battle was still going on in the center of Konoha between 3 individuals. Steel clashed against steel as Naruto's sword met Muta's blade in a test of strength. The two then saw a wave of sand approach them. The two backed away and expertly leapt over the 7-foot wave of sand which would have engulfed them, which had been used by Gaara. Naruto charged him and ran into him. His sand went to stop him, but Naruto pressed forward and tackled him, knocking him back. He then brought his sword up instinctively and blocked Muta's attack from behind. He went to attack Muta but was then grabbed by sand from behind and thrown away by Gaara. Muta then charged Gaara, his Nodashi drawn, and slashed at him, forcing him to use his sand to teleport elsewhere as his sand was unable to block the enchanted sword. Naruto, clearing the cobwebs, picked himself up and produced a pair of clones who attacked Muta, who fought them off, but that was what Naruto wanted, as he and another clone charged him and dropped low and delivered a kick to his jaw, sending him up into the air. Naruto was then launched into the air by the clone, and he brought his sword in line with him to impale him, only for both of them to be caught by sand and tossed on top of a roof. Gaara appeared on the roof and his body started to change as his arms became more animal-like, showing sharp claws and hard skin as he started using Shukaku's power. He lashed out with his claw, which would have broken Naruto's jaw had he not moved. He continued lashing out, forcing Naruto to keep moving. Gaara then sensed an attack and he looked up and saw Muta had leapt up and was preparing to cleave him in two while he was busy attacking Naruto. Muta brought the sword down across his head, slicing through his face. Muta then went to attack Naruto but was stopped when he heard snarling, and he turned around and saw Gaara glaring at him, cracks lining his face, a snarling look on his face as half of it transformed as well as fangs covered the right side of his mouth. The sand armor he had covered himself with had protected him from the attack. The battle had been going back and forth, so close it appeared that one of them would finish the other off only for the other to intervene. Muta during one exchange had nearly impaled both Naruto and Gaara at the same time. Any alliance that was made with two of them working together was quickly dissolved once he had exposed himself to the other. Neither would allow the other to defeat the other. One time Naruto had used a wind jutsu to counter Muta's lightning, only for Gaara to nullify both with his sand. Pieces of cut clothing and some minor hits was on each combatant except for Gaara, whose sand armor protected him. Great, now he's letting Shukaku take control. Look Naruto, I know you don't like using my power often, but now you're going to need it to survive this, said Kyuubi to him as he sensed the killing rage inside Gaara continue to grow higher and higher. Alright, I'll use your power, said Naruto to him. Gaara went to attack him but was stopped by a sudden aura of red chakra flowing around Naruto, who looked up at him, his eyes again murderous red and fangs and claws sprouting on him. A tail similar to a fox sprouted out of his back as well as he was in the one-tailed form. Sending his sword away, he charged him running on all fours like a fox. Gaara lashed out at him but Naruto evaded the attacks expertly and tackled him and bit down on his exposed shoulder that was still his. Gaara yelled in pain and fury and threw him off, and his rage filled his green and golden eye as part of his face was Shukaku's. He continued the transformation as his body was now transformed completely. I will slaughter you, he shouted, his voice a mixture of his and the sand demon's. He opened his mouth and fired a sand missile at him, who moved out of the way, destroying a building that he had been behind. Naruto moved out of the way and clawed at him across the stomach but wasn't able to penetrate his hide. It was brute strength versus speed and agility. Narrowly Naruto evaded his attacks and countered with vicious stabs and bites attempting to pierce his thick hide. Muta watched on, waiting for his chance to strike, which he would do so soon. Naruto slammed his head across his own, stunning Gaara, who lashed out with his own tail, tripping him up. He went to swat him with his tail and crush him but Naruto rolled out of the way. He then saw the vessel's body start to swell up and expand, and Naruto could only watch on as it seemed towered over 30 feet, seen by all who were in Konoha. The Sound 4, Gaara's siblings, the Sound Trio, Jiraiya, and Anko's group as well. Oh shit, shouted Naruto, who dodged its giant foot at attempting to stomp him. Naruto then, using his agility, ran up the limb all the way up to his face and attacked, only to be swatted aside from him as if he was a fly. He went to crush him again only to feel a stinging pain in his arm. The beast turned his head and saw that Muta had leapt on his arm and drove the blade into it, penetrating its skin. He growled and went to squash but Muta leapt out of the way, giving Naruto an opening. Gaara then heard Naruto scream and saw that his features had become more fox-like as a second tail appeared. Using the Kyuubi's power, Naruto then fired a burst of chakra from him, the top half of it shaped like a fox, the other like that of a snake, which slammed into him with great power and knocked him off his footing onto the ground, apparently defeated. Naruto smirked and thought it was over when he was suddenly attacked from behind, causing him to fall to the ground. He turned around and saw Muta with his Nodashi raised up. Now you die. But before he could deal the killing blow, a beam of red energy appeared and slammed into him. A cry of pain came from him as he was lifted off his feet and was knocked into a wall and fell to the ground. Enough games, said a voice, and Naruto saw a figure appear. He had 8 rings on his fingers and he stood before him. Fox Demon, you and your friends may have defeated the others, but I am more powerful than all of them, said Kage Sosano, the last agent. Jashin shall see to it that I, his loyal servant, shall defeat you. Naruto went into a defensive stance. After the battles with Yuho, Hanzo, Muta, and Gaara he had, this would be the final one. I don't know what it is you guys want with me, but I will defeat you like I've defeated the others. I'll send you to hell so you can join your comrades. At the Hokage's tower, Orochimaru crossed his arms as the two cages in front of him. Sarutobi had fought well, much better than he had expected from a man his age, but he knew that it was inevitable that he would win. Have you given up, old man? Has all these years finally caught up to you? Sarutobi looked at him. There is one last trick I have left. Although it will cost me my life. He then made symbols and Orochimaru recognized them and his eyes widened in horror. It was the jutsu that would summon Shinigami, the death god. No. Stop him. He shouted at the two who charged him but were too late. The death god appeared behind Sarutobi and looked at the two former rulers of Konoha, and the two turned to dust, revealing the bodies of Yoroi and Masumi. Orochimaru looked up at the specter of death. He knew the tales those that were affected destroyed by Shinigami would spend an eternity fighting in his stomach against all others who had been, and it appeared he could not escape that fate. But before he could do anything the spirit vanished. He looked at Sarutobi, not understanding. Why had he sent the Shinigami away before he could devour his soul as well? Orochimaru, there is something I must tell you, said Sarutobi to him. Orochimaru looked at him, not understanding what was going on. You may believe that it was Minato who did the sealing onto Naruto, but you are wrong. What are you babbling about? I saw him do it with my own eyes. Snapped Orochimaru at him. He did do it, but not of his free will. For you see, perhaps everything that has happened, Kyuubi's sealing, you leaving, this invasion, is my fault. He said, sadness in his voice. Orochimaru looked at him startled. What do you mean? Sarutobi looked at him and a tear grazed down his cheek. When I learned you were going to have a child, I became fearful of what could possibly happen. After I had failed to keep you from using the forbidden jutsus, I feared you would raise him and he would become like you did, heartless, uncaring, immune to joy and passion, and concerned only with gaining power. I could not stand by and watch history repeat itself. On the day of Naruto's birth, I persuaded Minato to take Naruto from Kushina, who sadly had already passed on, but not before she said she loved you and her son. He did so but with a heavy heart and sealed Kyuubi within him. This way you could not use him as the fox would protect his vessel. After you left, I realized as I hold the crying newborn in my arms what a fool I had been, and if that act sends me to hell, then so be it. I was consumed by grief with what I had done. I had sent an innocent baby into a world of hatred and misunderstanding. He said, revealing what he had done to him, who looked shocked at what he was being told. I could have ended it right there and then, but I couldn't bring myself to harm the boy who, every time I looked into his eyes, I saw his father staring back at me. I can tell now that your actions are guided not out of malice or hatred, but out of protection and care for your child, which any father would experience. You are not the soulless man I thought you was. I see a different man in front of me now, one I would be proud to have as my own kin. Tell Naruto that I am the one responsible for all of this. Orochimaru went to say something, but the old man's eyes closed and he knew he was gone. Unexplainable emotions swirled within him at what he had just been told. Slowly he started to turn around, but then stopped and turned to look at him. Sensei, he spoke with respect and not filled with hate or mockingness. If things had gone differently, I would have asked you to be my son's grandfather. Farewell, my teacher. He then called out to the Sound 4 to release the seal, and looking at his teacher one last time leapt down. Naruto evaded the beams of energy being fired by Kage's rings. Every time he dodged, it destroyed something else instead, such as a store or a fountain. Kage was keeping him on the defensive, and after all the battles he had been in, was tired and wasn't sure how much longer he could keep it up. But unexpected help came in the form of a most unlikely ally. When Kage casted a jutsu and threw that skull-like attack of energy at him, a statue made of sand appeared and took the blow for him. Naruto turned his head and his jaw dropped at he who saw. Gaara. He shouted in disbelief at the red-haired sand nin who approached him in his human form. Great, he probably saved me so he could kill me. Gaara looked at him, his blue meat green. You are the first person to actually deal damage to me. That blast you used forced me to transform out of that Shukaku's form. I can respect that, Uzumaki, for now I shall aid you. Kage was not impressed as the two vessels stood together in front of him. No matter, I'll defeat both of you and take you with me. Nothing shall stop me from defeating you. Naruto got into a defensive stance and pulled out his sword. It's time to end this once and for all. Kage fired his rings at them, which were countered by Gaara's sand. Naruto charged him with his sword drawn as Kage whipped out his mace and blocked the attacks and evaded kunai made of sand thrown at him by Gaara. Even though he was outnumbered 2-1, Kage's teleportation that he used prevented either of them from getting in any serious hits. Kage went to strike Naruto with his mace, but Naruto effectively ducked and sliced at his knee, drawing a cut on it. Gaara used a jutsu and fired bullets made of sand at him, which he countered by using a barrier jutsu. He fired a beam of energy at Naruto from his purple ring, who evaded and leapt onto a building and countered by casting Futon, Datapa, sending him back into a fence. Kage snarled in fury. Enough of this. He fired another skull made of energy which slammed into Gaara, as his sand was unable to block it fully as he was weakened due to the earlier fight. He went to smash him across the head with his mace, only to be intercepted by Naruto, who saved the red-haired vessel. "Mikazuki Tasuki Kair!" shouted Naruto, sending chakra into his sword and doing a slash sent a crescent moon-shaped attack right at him, which hit him in the chest, cutting into his skin, which he reached up and clutched. "Desert Coffin!" shouted Gaara, and sand swarmed around him, entrapping him as he was prepared to end it, ready to clutch his hand into a fist. "Desert Fun!" But before he could end the Jashin's follower's life, he broke free and using his rings levitated into the air. "I have had enough of your pitiful attacks," he snarled in full rage as he glared down at them. "It is time I end this once and for all. I will destroy you along with this accursed village." He then brought his hands down and all 8 of his rings glowed, and he fired a combined beam of energy from them down onto them. Naruto looked up at the impending death and his eyes narrowed in determination. "One shot, that's all I got. If I hit it we win, if I miss we're dead." He then turned to look at Gaara. Hope for the former. He was ready to use a move that his father recently taught him, a powerful move he had learned 1 week ago, a move his father had made 12 years ago when he had a rival, but this would be the first time he used it. He didn't know if he could do it, but only one way to find out. As he looked up, he brought his hand down and concentrating sent chakra into his palm. He then thought of what he was fighting for and what he hoped to see: his village, his friends, Anko, Haku, his father, Tayuya. Putting them into his thoughts, he focused hard as a ball of dark chakra appeared in his hand. He knew he had done it perfectly and was prepared to do it. Kurai, Rasengan. Dark great spiraling ball. He then threw the ball up into the sky, putting all his power into it as it collided with the beam of energy. At first the attacks were at a standstill, but soon it became clear that Naruto's was stronger and it pushed the attack back and continued towards Kage at great speed. "What?" shouted Kage in shock and disbelief. How could it be stronger than his? There was no way to dodge it up here. Impossible. He shouted, rare horror going throughout his body. The ball of power slammed into him, consuming him as he took all of it. "Lord Jashinnn." He shouted in denial as it consumed him, and it then exploded, going off, parts of it going off in 8 different directions. And in each one was a ring. "It's finally over." Naruto then sat down on the ground, glad it was done. "Uzumaki." He then saw Gaara looking down on him. "I do not understand how you won this day while I was defeated." "It's because of the people I care about. They helped me win." Gaara looked at him confused. "Someone once told me that as long as you fight only for yourself, no matter how powerful you or you're weak, but if you fight for people to protect them, no matter who they might be, even the weakest person can be a powerful force. Although you are strong, you fight for nothing." Gaara stared at him. "You say you wish to find your true purpose for living. Well, look around you. There is your village, your siblings. You can find a purpose for living with any of those instead of just going around being bitter and mad at the world. There's people here, even though it's a place where I'm hated, that I care about and will protect no matter what." Gaara stared at him still. "I do not understand your words, Uzumaki. They make little sense to me. But I shall try to find out the meaning of them. Until we meet again." Gaara then walked away, leaving Naruto by himself. Orochimaru shortly afterwards saw him. The battle was coming to an end with his forces being victorious. There were just a few stubborn resistances that needed to be dealt with. He took a deep breath and prepared to confront him about all that had happened. "You." He heard a voice and he turned and saw his former student appear along with Kakashi and a trio of genins. "Orochimaru, I will kill you for what you have done this day," shouted Anko, fury in her eyes, not noticing Naruto yet. "Anko," he said quietly. He was in no mood to fight. But it appeared Anko wasn't going to listen to him as she drew a kunai. The Sound 4 appeared beside him, prepared to defend him. A white-haired man appeared beside Anko and her group. "Orochimaru, I was hoping it wouldn't turn out like this. The battle is over, Jiraiya, our forces have won. Your payment for what you and the Leaf have done to my son. Jiraiya stared hard at him as the two former teammates stared at one another. Naruto had seen his father and Tayuya appear and was confused when he saw Anko along with Kakashi and Sakura show up as well. He could not understand what they were talking about and started to walk forward. He was unaware of a figure approaching from behind his Nodashi poised and ready to strike. Sensing danger, he turned around. But not quick enough. As the blade went into him, he felt his entire body go weak and unable to support himself as Muda, not dead like it appeared he had attacked him with his enchanted weapon. His body slowly fell to the ground as Muda glared at him and ran off. Naruto! Shrieked Tayuya, seeing it happen out of the corner of her eye, getting their attention. Sakura covered her mouth in shock at what she saw. Anko fell to her knees as she saw him. No! Shouted Orochimaru, seeing his son's fallen body. He rushed to his child and scooped him up, trying to get him to awake. This shouldn't happen. He can't possibly lose his own son. Naruto's body was lifeless, not moving. The Sound 4 and other ninjas, including the Sound Trio and Haku, who had heard his loud cry and were stunned and shocked at what they saw. Kabuto quickly rushed up to him and tried to use a healing jutsu to save his life. Kabuto, seeing his lord was in no condition to lead, knew he had to take action. Retreat! Fall back! Fall back! He shouted as Orochimaru picked up his son's body. He had desired vengeance for all that had happened and was willing to pay any price to do so. Would his son have to pay the price instead? They evacuated Konoha, retreating out of the village as fast as their feet could carry them. In the front was Orochimaru carrying his son's body as they fled back to Oto. Haku, who was with some of the others, heard small sobbing sounds and, still running, saw the source of it. Tayuya was crying. She was crying, tears going down her face as they ran. And he realized that a tear was going down his own face as well. In Konoha, the defenders watched on as they fled. They had survived the invasion and would be able to rebuild. They did not try to pursue as Jiraiya ordered them not to, saying that too many lives had been lost. Still on her knees was Anko, stunned at what she had just seen happen. Jiraiya looked at her sadly and could only put his arm on her shoulder to try and lend her support. It was all he could do. Chapter 40, Aftermath of the Invasion. At the hidden village of Sound, there was no people out in the rainy streets, and even if it wasn't raining, no one would be outside. The whole village was in a period of mourning of what had happened 5 days ago. What was expected to be a triumphant victory had instead been a horrible retreat, as Naruto Uzumaki, son of the ruler of Otogakure, had been attacked and wounded and showed no signs of waking up. There was no joy in the village, no children playing in the streets. No merchants selling their goods to interested buyers. Looking outside at the rainy village was none other than Orochimaru, who stared out blankly, his golden eyes showing nothing. He was tired, the past couple of days feeling like years to him after what he had seen. In his desire for vengeance for what had happened to his son as a child, he had made an alliance with Sand and had invaded Konoha with his men. He had defeated Sarutobi the Hokage, and it appeared victory was theirs when he saw Naruto be struck down, and they had retreated, not stopping until they were in the safety of their own land. Kabuto and all the best doctors, all the best medic nins in the land had tended to him, but nothing had come out of it. Naruto was still in that condition, showing no signs of recovery. Hearing some commotion, he made his way to the room but stopped and hesitated, unsure if he could enter. He opened the door and looked inside. Naruto was on the hospital bed, the area where he had been stabbed, bandaged, and on all sides of him were Kabuto, Yakushi, and several high-ranking medic nins. They were casting a healing jutsu, and they brought their glowing hands down on his chest and give him their healing as it flowed into him. For a brief moment Orochimaru swore he saw the boy's chest raise and his face twitch, but only for an instant. Every day, nearly every hour, they had tended to him, using their energies to try to heal him. Kabuto, seeing him out of the corner of his eye, looked at him. "Sir, we heard him cry out about an hour ago. He tried to form the word father but was unable to, but this is a good sign," he said, smiling, and Orochimaru nodded, glad he had a loyal follower like Kabuto. "The rest of you leave, I wish to speak with Kabuto alone," he said, and the half-dozen medics left, some of them patting him on the shoulder, offering their support, leaving him and his top advisor alone. "Why isn't he recovering? The wound should at least show some signs of healing." Kabuto shook his head. "I do not know, Orochimaru-sama, it seems as if the wound is rejecting our attempts to heal. I've never seen anything like this. But we'll keep trying, we won't rest until he is awakened," he said, trying to brighten the mood. Orochimaru sighed and Kabuto couldn't help but wince. A few days ago Orochimaru was a different man, full of confidence and power. Now he seemed like a shell of his former self ever since the disaster, a pitiful wretch. Tayuya has also been here at his bedside every night to comfort him. Orochimaru nodded, but it didn't really matter. He had seen the two get closer over the past couple of months ever since they had been reunited. She must be suffering as well along with everyone else. Kabuto didn't say anything else, but he didn't tell him that if Naruto didn't make any progress, he would probably be trapped in that state forever, a human vegetable unable to do anything. If he told him that, it would be a killing blow to him. Well, do what you can, there has to be some to save him. I don't think I can afford to lose my son like I lost everything else. Orochimaru said quietly and exited the room, giving his son one last glance. Elsewhere, Haku was with Zaku, Abumi and Kintsuchi. "Aw man, this sucks, I can't believe this happened," sighed Zaku, sitting next to Kin, who rubbed his back comfortingly. "If only I had taken the blow instead of him." Haku looked at him. "All of us wish it had been us instead of Naruto. The only thing we can do now is hope he pulls out of it. Naruto's strong, he won't quit without a fight," said Kin, trying to lift their spirits. Zaku looked at her. "Yeah, but who knows how long it will take. I heard some of the doctors saying it might be impossible to pull him out of it." Haku glared at him as he continued talking. "If that happens, it might be best too." Haku threw Senbon at Zaku, narrowly missing. "Don't you dare speak of such things," he said angrily. Zaku didn't respond as he knew he deserved that, and if Haku wanted to he could have pierced his eyes. "Naruto won't die, he won't. Now's not the time to be speaking of such things." The three looked and saw a white-haired ninja with green eyes appear. "Dark times, when we are threatening to harm our comrades," mused Kimimaro Kagaya. He and Arashi Fuma had stayed behind to watch over Otogakur while Orochimaru was away. Deciding to stay had been a decision he had regretted when he learned what had happened. The three looked at him and at each other. A sigh escaped Haku's lips as he leaned against the window. "Right now we need to watch out for each other and get our defenses strong. The Leaf might want to attack us soon." "Doubtful," said Kin. "They took some damage and I highly doubt they are prepared to attack us in our home so soon. They would have already if they really wanted to." Kimimaro nodded at her reasoning. "Still, the only thing we can do now is hope Naruto recovers." "Seems the only thing we can do," snorted Zaku as he hated feeling helpless and unable to do anything. That night a red-headed girl sat in a chair next to the bed which was occupied by Naruto. This was the fourth night in a row she had done it, wanting to be with him all throughout the night. Tayuya looked at his face as he was hooked up to a medical machine and his breath came in a slow, shallow pace even with an oxygen mask on. She took his hand in hers and felt how cold it was nearly ice. And a terrible thought went into her head: what if he had passed on? But she then felt his hand grip hers slightly and she knew he wasn't gone just yet. She looked at him, a rare look of sadness on her face. While she at first had thought him as a nuisance, she had seen a whole different side to him than what she thought of at first. He was strong, caring, devoted, there for his friends, loyal to his comrades, and a threat to his enemies. Over time she found herself attracted to him. While some had teased her for her at times coldness, she found herself liking him and it increasing to something else. "Come on, you have to get up, we're supposed to go on that date, remember?" she said, her voice a whisper. As if he heard her, she saw his chest rise, but that was the only thing he did, he was still in that lifeless state. "I don't know if you can hear me, Naruto, but I won't give up and neither should you. I'll do everything in my power to see that you come back to us," she said, a hint of a smile on her face. Tayuya reached into her pack and produced her flute. She then brought it up to her lips and began playing a tune on it for him, filling the room with music. In Orochimaru's chambers, Orochimaru was attempting to restart the low fire in the fireplace by flipping the log so that its embers could flare to life again. He didn't hear, or perhaps he didn't care, when Kabuto stepped in with his arms full of reports. He stopped at his desk and saw other documents that Orochimaru probably hadn't even touched in the past couple of days. Looking at his master, he knew that instead of half-heartedly poking the log, he would have disintegrated it with a jutsu not long ago. "There are some more reports from our scouts, sir," he said to him, who didn't listen. "Are you going to poke at that log for the rest of your life?" he said, surprising himself at his cold tone. "If I want to, replied Orochimaru, causing Kabuto to frown. All of the land has sympathy for their suffering ruler, he said, his voice hinting with sarcasm. Shut up. He heard him reply, but there was no anger or anything. Usually when he told someone to shut up, they either would or he would remove their tongue personally. Kabuto couldn't help but wince at what his master had become and felt foolish for what he had said. He turned and exited the chambers, leaving him be. Far away, far from Konoha, far from ZODIVK, in the middle of a forest sat a figure. He had his black hair in a long ponytail, his eyes were closed and he had his blade on his lap as he sat with his legs crossed. Hearing noises, he knew that eyes were on him, but he wasn't surprised considering what had happened. He knew he was being followed and had chosen the place for it to happen. 5 figures leapt down from the trees. Each of them had their faces covered by a veil. They wore black clothing and each carried a different weapon. The sitting figure opened his eyes and looked at them standing before him. A crow landed on a branch nearby. Surrender your head and your weapon at once, ordered the leader of the 5. The figure made no movement as he stared at them. This is your final warning. Still he did not move, he didn't even blink. The crow cawed loudly and the 5 drew out their weapons and charged him as he was already in motion. Grabbing a handful of dirt in one hand, he threw it right into a spear user's eyes, blinding him. He evaded the thrusts of a Sai users and dodged the attacks of a crossbow man. Raising his sword, he blocked one who used a pair of sickles. He heard a whistling sound and ducked, evading the final one who used a chain. Going for the long-range one, he dodged the bolt and pulling a dagger from his jacket tossed it right into his chest before he could dodge. The Sai user charged him and jabbed with his sei, attempting to go for his kidney and lung areas. He evaded expertly and, hearing the chain user throw again, used his opponent as a shield to block and trap him in the chain by his arm, trapping them both. He then stabbed him in the back with his nodashi and, grabbing the dead man's sai, tossed them right into the throat of the chain user. The sickle user attempted to go for his arms and he blocked and parried with ease, getting the advantage and plunging his blade into his ribcage and pulling it out. That left him and the spear user, who showed he was no novice and came at him. They went into a quick series of movement, him feigning weakness to make him think he could defeat him. All he was doing was leading him into his plan. He went low for his legs, but instead in the middle of it aimed high, forcing to make quick movements with his spear to block. He then aimed for his head in a slashing motion, attempting to decapitate it. The spear user blocked it well and seemed to get the advantage, forcing him back with it. He then chased after and smirked under his veil as they were running towards a tree, and he lunged it forward, thinking to kill him with it. But to his surprise, he hit nothing except solid wood as he had ran up the tree and did a flip in midair, putting him right behind him. The spear user gasped as he felt it go through his back and into his spine and fell to the ground. Looking at the dead bodies, he spat at them in disgust at how easy it was. He saw the crow land on another branch nearby and it was cawing angrily at him, which he glared at. He walked forward to the annoying creature and looked at it. If you want this back, Muda Daidoji said, raising his blade overhead. Come and take it yourself, he shouted, slicing the bird in half, which dissipated as it had been a summoned creature, as a warning from the organization that he had once been a part of. Very impressive, you choose well, Conan, said a shadowy figure who was with 9 others who wore similar cloaks, who had seen the display up to the crow being destroyed. But he has shown treason for killing my men and slaying my pet, and he failed his mission. A shark-like figure scoffed, not amused. I could have killed all of them in 10 seconds, though he does have potential, I'll give him that. I'll take that bet, said a figure with masks on the back of his cloak. Your pitiful men have failed, Conan. They were supposed to bring the damn fox to us, but they are all dead, you foolish wench, snarled a white-haired figure with a scythe at her, who glared at him. Enough, Hidan, it appears we have underestimated the fox and our former member, ordered Pain, the leader of Akatsuki. One of your kind was there as well and he failed as well. A blonde-haired figure standing next to a figure covered in a scorpion-like outfit spoke up. Well, since they failed, how about we take a crack at it next? I'm sure me and Sasori will have a bang, Deidara said, smiling. Pain shook his head. No, from what Zetsu has reported, Orochimaru did in fact attack Konoha and slain Sarutobi, but the group retreated after what happened to the fox vessel, his son. When Conan had reported that Orochimaru's son was the fox vessel, all of them except for one were surprised at the realization. The one who wasn't knew it all along, having found out 5 years ago before he left his village. Muda Daidoji 4. Now is of minor importance, except for his enchanted blade that he is of no concern. But he did do us a favor by injuring the Fox vessel. This next mission requires stealth and cunning. Itachi, the slayer of the Uchiha clan, stepped forward. Kisame, his partner, stepped forward as well, a wicked grin on his face. It is time to finish what Kage and the others started but failed to do. Muda has weakened him and will be defenseless. Go to Otogakure and find him and bring him back. The two bowed and prepared to leave when he spoke again. Oh, and Kisame, if you get the opportunity, slay the troublesome snake and take back the ring he stole from us. Kisame's grin reached all the way to his ears, a grin that only a shark could have. The next day at Konoha there was much going on. It too was a period of mourning for the death of their beloved leader Sarutobi, who died in the invasion. He didn't have any grievous wounds, though it seemed more like he died peacefully. Also there was reconstruction to rebuild the village after the attack was going on as well. Many were injured and sick as they had lost many. There was also discussion of who should be the next Hokage. Hatake Kakashi sighed as he looked around. The people were grieving and it would not be easy to rebuild after what had happened. They had survived the invasion after the Sound and Sand forces unexpectedly retreated. Looking around he saw his two students Sasuke and Sakura. Sasuke had not seen what had happened, having been in a fight with Gaara, but Sakura had witnessed what they both saw. Sasuke had been wanting an opportunity to confront his former teammate but to no avail. His former student being attacked, and for all they know it was possible he was dead. He did not expect his most unlikely father reacting the way he did though. With the exception of Anko, Sakura was suffering the most, it seemed like, as she had wanted to tell him that she didn't hate him and considered Naruto a friend. Now she may never get the chance to tell him. He had also heard some fools saying it was Sarutobi's fault for this happening, which made him shake his head in disgust. He looked at his bandaged hands still recovering from the burns they had gotten and looked up at the carved monuments of the past 4 rulers of Konoha. In the council room Jiraiya shook his head as he looked at the councilmen. He never was fond of the council, thinking they were arrogant fools who sat on their comfortable chairs while everyone else did all the work. We can't prepare ourselves to attack, not now at least. We have lost many and haven't even begun recovering yet. He said to them as he had heard the leader of them Danzo was planning on mobilizing Konoha's forces and attack Sound. Do you not care for all the lives that have been lost? Sneered Danzo at him. Even your former teacher is dead, do you not care for him at all? Jiraiya glared at him, a look of anger on his face. How dare that slob accuse him of being heartless? He had wept for hours on end after discovering the death of his beloved sensei. It was well known that Danzo was the only one in the good mood with Sarutobi's death, as he coveted the position of Hokage and would be a likely candidate for it. I must agree with Jiraiya, Danzo. Spoke up Hiashi, the leader of the Hyuga clan. We do not have the manpower to attempt an attack on them for vengeance. We be in their territory, as few of us know little about the land once known as Rice. It'd be foolish to attack so soon, not until we have recovered. Jiraiya nodded his head at him, glad he had support from the leader of the most powerful clan in Konoha. Danzo scowled at Hiashi and turned to look at Jiraiya. Well, we have other matters to attend to, such as the punishment of one Anko. Mitarashi. Jiraiya looked at him confused. Punishment. Danzo laughed at him. Jiraiya, have you forgotten she is the student of that accursed snake? All those affected by him have turned to the path of evil. She probably revealed areas to him about where to attack. Bile rose in Jiraiya's throat and it took all he could to not launch himself at him. She did no such thing, you fool. He said, raising his voice, surprising the council. If you had actually seen the fight instead of hiding like a coward, you would have noticed she fought and defended her home. She defeated over 30 enemies, which is more than I can say of most of you, so don't you dare accuse her of treason. He shouted angrily at them all. Danzo scowled at him for his outburst and clenched his hand into a fist, prepared to have some of his Anbu assassinate him. Hiashi spoke up again, trying to calm things down. She is not our concern right now, and I believe your words, Jiraiya, as I was out on the battlefield and did see her. For now our main concern is who should be our next Hokage. Danzo smiled again and stood up. Good question, my friend. We need a strong leader to guide us after what has happened. For that I nominate. I know the perfect person for the job. Interrupted Jiraiya. Danzo glared at him as the man was going to nominate himself. Jiraiya smirked, seeing how angry he got, and thought of the person. She would probably decline it at first, but if he could persuade her, she would be an excellent Hokage. Who in Konoha is more qualified than me, Jiraiya? Scoffed Danzo, not amused. That put a wrench in his plans as he didn't know where she could be. The person who I believe should be Hokage is not in Konoha, but if you give me 2 weeks to find them, I'll bring them back with me, if not then you can decide who should be the next Hokage. Jiraiya said, making a deal with them. Danzo rested his fingers against his chin and looked at the councilmen who were intrigued by him. He frowned and looked at him. All right, 14 days and not a day more. That is as long we shall give you, don't disappoint us. Jiraiya smirked and exited the room. His footsteps had more energy in them than they had had the past couple of days as he went outside. He knew he would find his former teammate. There was also another reason why he wanted to find her. If Naruto Uzumaki was still alive, it was likely that his other teammate would try to find her as well. At that same time, Orochimaru was in his chambers thinking of all that happened. He thought back to the past of what had recently happened, thinking of first of the invasion that happened. He had defeated Sarutobi, who had told him what had really happened. If things had gone differently, odds were the Sandaime would have been his son's honorary grandfather. He frowned when he relieved the scene of his son being stabbed by an enemy who wasn't of Leaf, it looked like, in the mad desperate retreat. He continued his thoughts to the past couple of months, being reunited with his son at Wave after he used the Kyuubi's power the first time, revealing that they were father and son. The joy he felt in training him and watching him become strong. Seeing him have friends such as Haku, Zaku, Tayuya, and the others, which was something he wanted so badly all his life. Watching him complete his first mission. His thoughts went back further to when he became the new ruler of a village that he had made strong. How he recruited able-bodied children to become his ninjas. When he in secret gave Naruto the very first jutsu he learned after saving him. He remembered joining Akatsuki, pretending to serve them when he was in secret waiting for a chance to get his son. He then remembered that fateful day when Naruto was born, how he could only watch helplessly as the nine-tailed fox Kyuubi was sealed in him, forcing him to abandon Konoha and learning that the mother of his child had passed away. He remembered in his quest to learn how to prevent people from dying he became filled with the dark jutsus and became a monster, not caring for anyone or anything. He shook those thoughts out of his head and thought of his days at the academy. A rare laugh escaped him as he thought of the antics he and his teammates had done. His teammates. Orochimaru's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. How could he have been so blind and foolish? The answer was right there in front of him this whole time. As he thought of his son, he realized that there might be a chance yet for him to heal. If anyone can heal that wound, she can. He muttered in determination, his eyes no longer blank, filled with resolve. Later, Tayuya was heading to the hospital room to see Naruto. As she opened the door, she looked inside and her eyes widened in disbelief. Kabuto! She shouted. The medic Nin heard her and quickly made his way to the room, fearing the worst. What is it? What's wrong? He asked loudly to her, who pointed inside. He peered inside and saw that Naruto was gone. Orochimaru-sama! He shouted, running as fast as he could to his chambers. Knocking on the door, he called out again, but to no answer. Frowning, he twisted the knob on the door and pushed it open. Orochimaru-sama, Naruto is. He stopped as he looked around and saw to his surprise that he wasn't there as well. Both of them were gone. Kabuto could only look around helplessly at the empty room as both father and son had disappeared. Miles away from the village, a figure walked with a determined step as he carried on his back a boy who was unconscious. Each step he took was one of an iron will. To find the one person who could possibly heal his son. He looked up at the sky and felt the wind blow, his golden eyes scanning the sky. He knew the task would probably be difficult, but he would do whatever it took to find her. Orochimaru, carrying Naruto, pressed on, determined to find his former teammate, the slug Sannin. Tsunade.